Hello and welcome. I'm Leigh Ann Gerrans and you're watching W News, broadcasting live from the Al Arabiya headquarters. These are our top stories. Prime Minister Netanyahu prepares to meet President Trump at the White House, becoming the first foreign leader to visit the Oval Office in Trump's second term. China hits back at Trump's tariffs as they impose a 15% tax on US goods, prompting an international trade war. And billions of US aid in exchange for precious metals. Ukraine makes a deal with the United States. To our top story, and US President Donald Trump is preparing for talks with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House today. It is the first in-person meeting between the two leaders since the Gaza ceasefire and in Trump's second presidency. The two are expected to sit down in the next few hours and speak publicly to the press afterwards. I'm now joined by our correspondent, Nick Harper from Washington. Nick, good evening to you. Thank you for joining me. These talks have been held at a critical juncture for the Middle East. The Gaza ceasefire, Iran, Israel-Saudi normalization on the agenda. What do you think will be the main takeaways from the meeting later on?
Yeah, a critical day, Leigh Ann, when it comes to Middle East relations. This US-Israel meeting, very important to Donald Trump, but also important to Benjamin Netanyahu. The second phase of the peace deal will undoubtedly top the agenda, both men wanting to do all they can to get hostages back. But they'll also be looking ahead to what happens to Gaza. We've been hearing from a senior Trump administration official in the last couple of hours who says that Donald Trump thinks it's impractical to make Gaza habitable for at least 10 to 15 years. The official saying that Trump sees it as a demolition site. And you mentioned the Saudi Arabia-Israel normalization deal. That is going to be central to discussions as well. Both Donald Trump and Netanyahu wanting to move ahead with that, really trying to look ahead to see how they can make that happen at the same time as trying to push ahead with the peace deal in Gaza.
Yes, let's just talk about the second stage of the Israel-Hamas ceasefire deal. It's actually been put on hold, as we know, because Netanyahu is in the US. Is there optimism that the next stage will also progress smoothly and lead to a permanent end to the war?
Not huge amounts of optimism, certainly not here in Washington. We know that both leaders here in DC will speak about how to get the remaining hostages released, but there is a thorny issue about Israeli troops withdrawing from Gaza. Now, that's part of the second phase of the peace plan, but it's not something that Benjamin Netanyahu, and certainly not something that the right wing in his coalition wants to take place. They are still talking about the need to eradicate Hamas. They don't believe that that has happened during the course of this conflict, and therefore it will become a sticking point when it comes to the second stage of this. Donald Trump also telling reporters there are no guarantees that the ceasefire will hold. So certainly not a tremendous amount of optimism about things progressing smoothly.
Nick, Netanyahu is, of course, the first foreign leader to see Trump in a second term. Should we expect changes in Netanyahu's dealings with the US now compared to when we actually had the Biden administration in power?
Well, I think Benjamin Netanyahu certainly sees Donald Trump as a more stabilising force when it comes to Middle East relations. It is someone that he was hoping to win the election over Joe Biden. He also sees him as more of a constant backer of Israel than Joe Biden. That's despite the Biden administration's staunch backing of Israel throughout this conflict. And part of that has already been on display in the last couple of weeks, with Donald Trump suggesting some harsh restrictions when it comes to Palestinians, suggesting that the whole of Gaza, the whole of the West Bank, the Palestinians there should be moved out to Egypt and Jordan, relocating them away from those two Palestinian sites. Of course, Jordan and Egypt are pushing back against that, as is Saudi Arabia. But Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump, at least in the past and during Donald Trump's first term, were certainly seen as firm friends when it came to pushing forward both of their agendas in the Middle East.
Nick Harper in Washington, thank you so much for joining me. Let's get into this further now with Fleur Hassan-Nahoum, Israel's foreign military special envoy and the former deputy mayor of Jerusalem. Fleur, good evening to you and thank you for joining me. First of all, I just want you to react to what Nick said there, what we can expect from these talks and also from a possible second stage of the ceasefire agreement.
Well, it's actually quite interesting because Hamas is claiming that the second stage of the negotiations have already begun. In Israel, we understand that we're waiting for the Prime Minister to return. But I think there's already something going on in terms of the second stage. And I think that's something that President Trump is very keen on. The Israeli public is very keen, of course, to bring all our hostages home. We have a family of 2 babies and a mother whose fate we don't know yet. And so it's still very raw over here in Israel. And we're expecting and we're hoping and praying that this second phase comes through. But what I think people are talking less about, and I think that the focus will be mainly on, will be a nuclear Iran and how to avoid it, which is in the interest, of course, of Israel as a result of the fact that Iran threatens Israel to extinction with their nuclear or future nuclear capabilities, but also it threatens the whole of the free world. And this is something which I think also Saudi Arabia will be looking at very keenly.
So do you think this is why the US President Donald Trump is expected to sign this new directive today before he meets Benjamin Netanyahu to restore maximum pressure on Iran?
Well, definitely that's part of it. He never hid that this is his intention. He did it in the first administration. It's the only thing which, in my opinion, makes any sense. The Biden administration were handing or unfreezing tons of cash to the Islamic Republic of Iran, which is the biggest exporter of terrorism. And again, you can deal with all of their proxies like Hamas and Hezbollah and the Shias in Iraq and the Houthis, or you can actually go to the root of the problem, which is the jihadi fundamentalism coming out of the Islamic Republic of Iran. So I think a lot of their talk will be about that. And of course, any type of normalization with Saudi Arabia and how the Abraham Accords are extended.
Will this meeting actually benefit Netanyahu and the political turmoil he faces at home and globally, do you think, Fleur? Will this see a changing point for him?
Well, that's a great question because Netanyahu really politically is in a little bit of hot water. No, I wouldn't say too much. There are parts of his party, one of the coalition partners, who already left the coalition because they were against the deal. They were against the hundreds of terrorists with blood on their hands being released into freedom. And so he does experience some type of opposition. But the truth is that the majority of the Israeli public want to see the hostages home. And that is what we're looking at. And also, which President Trump, luckily, has mentioned enough times, we want to see the beginning of the end of the rule of Hamas in the Gaza Strip. And as you've seen in the last few weeks with the hostage releases, it doesn't mean that they've let go of any of their power. And this is something very, very serious and significant to talk about, because otherwise, if they don't leave Gaza as the main rulers, then Israel faces an existential threat from Hamas in its southern borders, and we can't have that.
Yes, indeed. We did see Hamas very strong there at those hostage handovers. Trump has not given any assurances that the temporary ceasefire will actually hold. What is the expected Israeli outcome at the end of the truce? You've said eradicating Hamas. If that's not possible, where do you draw the line?
Well, this is actually a very difficult thing because Hamas is so integrated into daily life. It's almost impossible to separate Hamas from the population. They employ so many of the people, or they used to. You even have staff of UNRWA, a UN organization, which is completely infiltrated by Hamas. It's very difficult to separate Hamas from the people. And this is why I think that President Trump's idea of trying to create a temporary refugee transfer to Egypt or Jordan is not a bad idea, because that would also give the opportunity to root out those jihadists from the innocent women and children. But this is a very, very complicated situation that we're in. There is no alternative rule to Hamas at the moment. And the way I see it is the only real guarantee, or the only real way forward, would be to somehow connect the post-war Gaza with the extension of the Abraham Accords. If we could somehow get the Saudis and the Emiratis involved in the reconstruction or the administrative rule of Gaza, nobody knows better than the Emiratis and the Saudis how to start de-radicalizing their societies.
Fleur Hassan-Nahoum, Israel's Foreign Ministry Special Envoy and the former Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem, thank you for your insights.
Thank you.
Now, a trade war is brewing between the United States and China after Beijing imposed new levies on American crude oil, machinery and some cars. Those retaliatory tariffs came shortly after President Donald Trump slapped a 10% duty on all Chinese imports. Leigh Ann Gerrans tells us more.
China is hitting back against US tariffs, targeting not only American imports but also business. Additional tariffs will be imposed on some items originating in the US. This is what a statement from the Chinese Finance Ministry says. It came within minutes of President Donald Trump imposing a blanket 10% duty on all Chinese imports. Beijing's tariffs include a 15% duty on coal and liquid natural gas from the US and a 10% additional duty on crude oil, farming machinery and some cars. Residents are worried the measures could make lives more expensive for people on either side of the Pacific Ocean.
I
think the end result is that both sides suffer. The US imposes tariffs and then our products will sell less abroad, because tariffs mean higher prices and buyers may be unwilling to purchase. As for the US, it pursues unilateralism, and it negatively impacts its own international influence, because it not only targets China, but also other countries like Canada and Mexico.
In what's being seen as a counter-offensive move, China is also opening an investigation into US technology giant Google for alleged violation of anti-monopoly laws. Though Google's search services were pulled from China back in 2010, the company still offers advertising to businesses there. Trump has defended the tariffs, saying China hasn't done enough to stem the flow of fentanyl, a potentially lethal opioid, into the US. Though China says it has tightened regulation on drugs that could be used to make fentanyl, Trump says he could impose more duties if the supply doesn't stop. It's a prospect that's raising concern for Chinese businesses bracing for the possibility of a trade war.
For China's small and medium-sized manufacturing enterprises, the impact is definitely significant because their sales in the US may decline. Americans might choose cheaper alternatives instead.
Though Trump's tariffs have kicked in, Beijing's tariffs don't come into effect till the 10th of February. And experts believe that gives the two nations a window for negotiating a deal to possibly avert a full-blown trade war. Leigh Ann Gerrans, Arabiya News.
Let's chat to the assistant editor of The Spectator and host of the Chinese Whispers podcast, Cindy Yu. Cindy, a pleasure to have you on the show. China has launched limited tariffs after Trump imposed sweeping new levies. Will we see a repeat of the two-year trade war between the US and China during Trump's first presidential term? Or do you feel like this appears more measured the second time round?
It certainly is a little bit more measured, but I think it will nevertheless be a repeat in the sense that this is just the opening salvos from both sides. Trump, during the election campaign, said that he was going to levy up to 60% tariffs on Chinese goods. So what we're seeing today is really low compared to what he has previously talked about. Similarly, for the Chinese, their counter-retaliatory measures have been pretty limited and controlled in the areas that they're talking talking about. As your correspondent said, that it will be a week until they really come into play. So basically, both sides are dancing around this question of negotiations, and the Chinese side have said, basically, we're going to dance with you. We're going to see what you want, but let's talk. We're not just going to back down.
Yes, there seems to be a lot of dancing at the moment between the US and a few countries. We are awaiting Chinese tariffs on US goods to come into play, as you said, on the 10th of February. What exactly are they targeting?
So we have seen a range of measures from the Chinese side. 15% on US coal and LNG, liquefied natural gas, 10% on crude oil, farm equipment and some large vehicles. But there's also been other non-tariff measures as well. So export controls on critical minerals that China controls the supply chains of, which America needs for high-tech industries like semiconductors. They're really crucial. Also an antitrust probe into Google's operations within China, as well as adding to American companies onto China's own unreliable entity list, a blacklist for companies, as it were. And finally, China has also complained to the World Trade Organization about America's anti-free trade practices. So the package that has come about in just the hours after the American tariffs came into action suggests to me that China has been pricing in this tariff action, this protectionism from President Trump for a long time now. You know, they've been listening to what he's been saying on the election campaign, and they knew what they wanted to do in retaliation.
Yes, they've had some time to think about it. But can we just touch on what you mentioned there? China's tech influence in the US has really been front and center. We have seen this, haven't we, with the battle over TikTok. China is starting, as you just said, that anti-monopoly investigation into Google. Do you think this is just basically tit for tat at the moment?
And of course, DeepSeek, which is catching up fast with OpenAI's ChatGPT, a development that a lot of American and Western observers didn't think was possible. I think we're certainly seeing a tech race. And whilst America still has the technological supremacy in the world, China is catching up fast. And so there's a real live question about what to do about this kind of catching up. In terms of tit for tat, I think with the Google probe, it certainly is retaliatory. China's been very vague about what exactly Google has done that is meant to have been antitrust. We see that in terms of American and Western players in general, China has done tit for tat in the past. If you think back to the Trump first presidency, hunt, as it were, persecution of the Chinese company Huawei. At the same time as Huawei's financial director, Meng Wanzhou, was put under house arrest, China put 2 Canadians under arrest, basically, in China as well. So a lot of this hostage diplomacy happens with individuals and with companies. The TikTok question, I think, is slightly separate in the sense of, you know, why is America concerned about TikTok? And that goes back to the tech race, that actually you can no longer write off China as just a copycat or thief of technologies. It is doing really amazing technological things at the moment that is giving America a run for its money.
Yeah, we absolutely saw that, didn't we, with DeepSeek. A 10% tariff has been agreed on the US side, but you mentioned earlier Trump has threatened to increase these if Beijing does not stop the flow of fentanyl. He's spoken a lot about fentanyl, Donald Trump. What's China's response been to this?
Yes, to be clear, China doesn't export fentanyl to America, but it does export fentanyl precursors. Now, fentanyl, being an artificial chemical drug, is created in labs rather than harvested, as it were. And so the chemical compounds that go into fentanyl, a lot of them are being exported from China. Now, this has been an ongoing thorn in the side of US-China relations for years now. Joe Biden tried to get on top of it. It was one of the main things that Xi and Joe Biden talked about in San Francisco when they met there a couple of years ago. But China has always said it's really hard to get on top of these precursors because the chemical compound can simply change very quickly. So if you put in a law banning one kind of compound, a similar but not the same kind of compound can be created by these kind of labs that are exporting them. And now, the Americans don't believe this and blame China for not having the political will to crack down on the issue. So I think with this trade war waging now, we'll see who's right, because President Trump is basically forcing them to put their money where their mouth is and say, well, if you care about it so much and here's a bit of a pressure on you, then sort it out. And so we'll see how much is solvable from the Chinese side and how much really is a really tricky policy area for the Chinese too.
Yes, indeed. Cindy Yu, assistant editor of The Spectator and host of the Chinese Whispers podcast. I hope to have you back on soon. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Let's take a look at some of the other stories making the headlines today. 10 people are dead at a Swedish adult education centre in the town of Örebro, 160 kilometres west of Stockholm. Police and other emergency services were called to the campus. Regberska school after the shooting. Swedish authorities say they believe the shooter is dead and that he acted alone. Syrian President Ahmad al-Sharaa is visiting Ankara for talks with the Turkish leadership. The heads of state are expected to discuss economic recovery and stability. Turkey has offered to help Syria rebuild after years of turmoil and hopes to secure its support against Kurdish militants in the northeast. El Salvador has offered to take in dangerous criminals from the US, even those with an American citizenship. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio says he would need to study the offer and has met with President Nayib Bukele on a visit to Central America. It's believed El Salvador will also accept migrants who are due to be deported. President Trump is planning a negotiation agreement with Ukraine involving supplies of rare earth materials in exchange for US aid. It's an idea that was first floated by President Zelensky in October as part of his so-called victory plan to end the war with Russia. Trump told reporters he wanted equalization from Ukraine for the response to the $300 billion they received from Washington. Let's go live to Kyiv now to speak to our correspondent, Stuart Smith. Stuart, good evening to you. Thank you for joining me. First of all, what kind of metal is Donald Trump referring to? How valuable are they? And what is he expecting to actually use them for?
Well, he explicitly talked about rare earth metals, which are a set of metals that aren't actually that rare, but they are found only in certain geographical locations. And what makes them special, especially now and looking ahead into the future, is they have some very unique electrochemical properties and magnetic properties that mean they're going to be really important for things like electric vehicles and motors, and also for renewable energy technology. They're also important in things like cancer drug treatment, scandium, one of those. That's important there. And so while maybe one you've heard of tungsten, others, many of them you may not have. The reason Donald Trump might be interested in them is because China currently controls 70% of the world's supply of rare earth metals, and Ukraine has some too, but at the moment it can't get to them. So if Ukraine can get Donald Trump interested in potentially a deal based on providing rare earth metals, it may mean the US is willing to provide more arms to Ukraine in order that it can get its territory back under control and then potentially sell those metals to the United States.
We've seen the Trump administration freeze billions in foreign aid. This has clearly worried countries like Ukraine, who have been relying on the support of the US. Is this the only way to keep support going by providing an exchange?
Yeah, well, Olaf Scholz, the Chancellor of Germany, said that he thought this was a very selfish, very self-centered move, and suggested Ukraine's going to need exactly these kinds of minerals once the war is over in order to try to rebuild. But it does appeal to the very transaction, businessman-like nature of Donald Trump's politics, and indeed it was the Ukrainians that suggested it to him initially last year as one of the ways that potentially would keep him interested in Ukraine's survival for the war in for Russia's war in Ukraine. Now, one senior Ukrainian official speaking anonymously said that having a strategic US interest in Ukraine is a key component to Ukraine's future. So it's something Ukraine is up for. It says it's ready to sign documents about joint agreements, but this is just Donald Trump riffing at the moment. There's no particular detail about what exactly he's suggesting here.
Yes, we could be waiting for that detail. Critics of President Zelensky have accused him of caring more about elections than actually winning the war. There are reports that Trump wants Kyiv to hold a presidential election by the end of this year. What are you actually hearing your end? Is this a possibility, Stuart?
So here in Ukraine, there's been no formal request, some anonymous officials say, asking Ukraine to have elections by the end of the year, but it has been mooted. It was mooted by the Joe Biden administration as well. The problem for Ukraine is that an election poses a very good opportunity for any potential Russian interference and would only go further potentially to destabilise the situation in Ukraine. But indeed it was suggested recently by one of Trump's special envoys who's looking into trying to resolve the Russia-Ukraine war, though it was suggested this would only potentially come after a ceasefire. But it's another one of those where a lot of ideas are being thrown out at the moment, but there's nothing official here being suggested from the White House to Kyiv.
Stuart Smith in Kyiv, thank you so much for joining me. Now, the US has expelled its first batch of illegal Indian migrants since President Donald Trump's return to office. The Trump administration has repeatedly raised the issue of irregular migration from India to the US in the last few weeks, with the US president claiming India promised to address the problem. Neha Punya has more on this.
A US military aircraft carrying 205 illegal Indian migrants reportedly took off from San Antonio in Texas very early in the morning Tuesday India time. The US Embassy in New Delhi has told Al Arabiya News, and I'm quoting now, the United States is vigorously enforcing its border, tightening immigration laws and removing illegal migrants. It says these actions send a very clear message that illegal migration is not worth the risk. Now, the expulsion of these Indians comes just days after US President Donald Trump spoke to India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Back then, Trump had said that Modi promised him that New Delhi would do, quote, what's right on the issue of illegal migration. Last month, India's foreign ministry also said it would be willing to take Indians who are illegal immigrants back from any country as long as their nationality can be proved to be Indian. Reports suggest that both countries have identified 20,000 Indians who could be deported in the coming weeks. Now, Indians only make up a small percentage, about 3% of all illegal border crossings into the US, but their numbers have been growing. Many who are now attempting to enter America are doing so by paying smuggling gangs as much as $60,000 US, and most of these people come from poor families. And data shows that last year there were about 90,000 attempts by Indian nationals to enter the country without authorization. Now, experts say New Delhi is keen to ensure that, it's separating the issue of legal migration of millions of Indians to the US from the question of illegal migrants who are in the US as well. Indians make up the largest group who are in the US on skilled visas, many of them working in the tech industry there. India is also hoping that its willingness to play ball on the migration issue is going to prevent the Trump administration from attacking it on the issue of trade. US President Donald Trump has repeatedly referred to India as an abuser of tariffs, but India has not been named in the new tariffs that have been imposed against many countries by the US president. It's also likely that Prime Minister Narendra Modi will travel to the US next week to meet Donald Trump in what could be the first meeting between the two leaders since Trump returned to the White House.
Neha Punya in New Delhi, thank you. Let's take a look at the top business news. Volvo car sales fell by 5% year-on-year in January. The Sweden-based automaker says the decrease was largely due to the timing of the Chinese New Year. Volvo Cars, which is majority owned by China's Geely, also said the number of electrified cars was up 17% from last year, accounting for 44% of its total sales. Citigroup CEO Jane Fraser has told top executives that the bank will continue to allow most employees to work remotely at least 2 days a week. According to the Financial Times, Fraser believes Citi's flexible work requirements gives it a competitive advantage. Last month, US President Donald Trump ordered federal workers to return to the office 5 days a week, reversing a COVID-19 pandemic trend. Turning to sports now, and in football, Europe's winter transfer window has closed as teams secured late deals before the deadline. Manchester City unveiled the signing of Nico Gonzalez from Porto yesterday to make their winter spending spree to over £175 million. Tottenham, West Ham and Aston Villa were the other significant movers late on in the window. And Phil Mickelson has suffered a minor shoulder injury during a workout in the gym and will miss the Live Golf season opener in Saudi Arabia this week. The 54-year-old golfer did make the announcement on social media. And a reminder of our top stories today. Prime Minister Netanyahu prepares to meet President Trump at the White House, becoming the first foreign leader to visit the Oval Office in Trump's second term. China hits back at Trump's tariffs as they impose a 15% tax on US goods. And billions of US aid in exchange for precious metals. Ukraine makes a deal with the United States. And that's all from us on W News. Thank you so much for joining us. The dressing room is coming up next. And don't miss Tom Burges Watson with GNT. Good night.
Arabiya News, we go beyond the headlines.
From the latest breaking news to in-depth coverage of global events.
We're not bought or sold. Nobody owns us.
The loss of life, the destruction of property. The conflicts are such a terrible thing.
Context and analysis to help you see the full picture.
The world is in a very dangerous place.
Join us on Arabiya News.
It's very impressive.
Where knowledge meets perspective.
This is the dressing room with Arabiya News. And yes, my boys, what's happening?
Great weekend, man, like week. Trevor McDonald.
So how's it gone, man? Let's get into what we've been doing individually. We're going to start off with you, Bridgie. What happened, mate? What's your week?
Before we get into the collective,
nothing. Individually, nothing, mate. Just kids football.
Okay.
Kids football on a Sunday, which is nice. It was cold, but the sun was out.
Yeah.
Nice recovery day from the Saturday day out.
I'll tell you what I did. I had quite a busy week. Lots of football. Was up and down the road again.
but I did co-coms for the first time, Coley. Co-coms for the Forest Brighton game. So good for me. Like when I arrived, I sort of knew it might happen, but then the producer said, look, do you want to do it in the morning? Yeah, we're doing it. So I didn't have to think about it because it's harder than it looks because you sort of like, you go up on the gantry. So I went up at the City Ground, went up on the gantry, and it's like, you know, like where you've got a great view of the pitch, great view of the pitch, and you're with Darren Fletcher, who's a brilliant professional, like top drawer, and you got to just bounce in and bounce out of the commentary and try and explain what's going on in live times. So it's good that I didn't have time to think about it. I think it went well. I loved it, but it's harder than it looks, I would say.
Is it?
Yeah, because you've got to see everything in real time and relay it to the fans, you know what I mean?
I think it's quite good, though, when you're sat up high, you can see everything going on.
You do, absolutely.
Everything.
But do you get confused with the players, though, like the names and that?
Yeah,
like,
do you know what Lucy Ward said to me, and she's brilliant as well, because she was doing it with me, and it was a great bit of advice. You know, because when you're far away, sometimes you can't see the numbers. He said, so write down little notes, like, say, for instance, like Nico Williams, like, orange boots or something clear. So you're on it straight away. You know, all little tricks like that. And also, like if you're talking in the middle of something and you've got a sense there might be a chance. So then you let Fletch come in because he's going to be, so-and-so shoots, goal. You know what I mean?
And then sometimes you've got to let it breathe as well. So you can't just say, like, so you can't just come after, obviously, the main commentator and then just, unless he asks you something, then you come in. So there's got to be always a little prompt. I tried it once. I turned up.
I can imagine you talking all the way through it.
I could talk. I was going commentary.
Colin Cole swallowed a dictionary.
Using all these big words like I don't even understand myself, just to try and impress. But I can't imagine doing that like on a day to day. I got to respect. You got to respect them, didn't you?
It's a skill.
It's a great skill for commentators, co-coms. I've heard Rio do a few times. And I'm not sure. You see, like with co-coms, does it really work with three of you, or
good point?
'Cause it's a little bit. Sometimes I feel it's a little bit crowded. Like, I'd rather me personally, I'd rather just one commentator and the co-com.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
And that's it. And then the extra person, I don't really... He could be beside the pitch, give us another view of something, or... you know what I mean? I prefer that. But it's interesting when I'm seeing three as the main people on the TV.
I think more the merrier, I think. It's less talking now.
You don't get paid overtime, do you?
You just got to get turned up and get paid for doing nothing. So that's your week.
Yeah, what did you up to, Colin?
Do you know what? I went up to... I've been a few places this week. But I went to meet the gaffer, Graham Potter.
Yeah.
I met the new data analysis guy that he's brought in, Carl.
Right. Okay.
So the thing about it is, like, because it's a bit changing at West Ham at the moment. It's a lot going on, and we've got to bring in players for the transfer window. So everyone is kind of leaving everyone to get on with it and not talking to each other, and just everyone's getting on with their jobs, but everyone's still trying to aim for the common goal, trying to get players in, trying to put players out on loan. We've got a few players out on loan, young ones, go out and get experience. So, it's just a lot of talking to agents and all that sort of stuff.
Obviously, it's transfer deadline today.
Yeah.
Your phone's been blown. I've seen you actually look more stressed than I've ever seen you look today.
Yeah,
going off.
Do you know what? I forgot it was transfer deadline day.
I only found out because I've just been for an MRI and there was a load of players there.
Oh, is it?
Scans, yeah.
Come on. That's another topic.
No, I can't remember the name.
Well, you didn't know the names. One of them.
It ain't Haaland or something.
But because you was out on Harley Street, innit? Yeah, that's where they're all at.
Yeah, and little scan on that.
When did you get the results?
I don't really know. I think it's tonight or tomorrow, I think. I'll get a phone call, see what it is. But he was telling me there's so many treatments there now.
Yeah.
Really?
Like you were talking about stem cells before, weren't you? Like
stem cells,
straight away I'm thinking it's going to be an operation, but he said no, there's all different types of injections you can do to help it.
Really? Even since our day?
Yeah. Even
is it?
You know, like the way you used to spin the blood and everything.
Yeah.
He's saying now it's just even better. It's like 10 times better.
Really? More effective?
More effective.
I might have to look.
A bit late for you two.
Oh, no. If you see my knees, there's no helping. I need an op.
Playing, mate.
Mate, don't.
Mate, I wish I could get back to playing, just like even Sunday League, but I just can't. I can't run these. And that's the thing, when you retire, and if you stop as well, if you don't do nothing for quite a while, your body just seizes up, and that's never a good thing.
You retire because of injuring your body,
basically,
you didn't, did you? You just couldn't be
No.
bothered.
No. I retired because my legs were gone.
Right,
I could
okay.
get myself fit for the games, but the reason I retired, I think I said it before, we were playing against the New York Red Bulls second team, right? So their second team, and we're playing in New York. I said it before. I know the way they press the Red Bulls like
Red Bulls, yeah.
And we lost 5-0, right? And these little rats were just on me. And usually I could get away from people, and it was like that. And it was in this. I just wanted on it. And then I was getting so frustrated. I thought I need to get one of these guys sent off. So I tried to get this Ecuadorian left back sent off. I tried to do an experience thing, and he just got up and pushed me. And even he just felt so strong, and I was like, on the floor, oh no, I'm done. Get me out of here. I actually, that night we went out in New York. Got back in, had a good night out. Got back into the hotel about 4 a.m. But all through the night, it's funny, innit? I just knew something changed in me. I knew from then that's me done. There was still 4 months to go to the end of the season, but it was a good night out anyway.
I had the same thing when I'm right at the end. So I came back from Indonesia. I've talked about that. When I got back, I went to. So I got offered a trial. I'm like, trial? Like, see me and my dignity, my pride. I was like, I ain't doing a trial. Yeah. But they was like, no, it's not a trial as such. It's just to see if you can run still. Because we've heard about your knees. And I was like, do you know what? Fair play. Let me come in for a month and try and get going, get fit again. Yeah. Went into AFC Wimbledon. Right. It's not far from my house. And I was there for quite a while with Neil Yardley. And they wanted to do the deal. I got to a point where I could kick on again. Yeah. But then I even thought, I saw these kids running around me and I was like, I really used to be something. You're getting the aftermath of me. It kind of hurt my pride kind of thing when you see a boy exploding past you and you're not that guy no more. You got to try and pull it back.
It's horrible.
It's horrible. It's not nice.
That was like my last year at Reading. It's horrible. Yeah. I remember coming up against Mahrez.
Oh, God, you don't need that, do you?
I know, but I didn't really know much of him at the time.
Really?
And he turned me inside out, and I definitely lost the yard. And I thought, that's me done, mate. Yeah. I'm glad he went on to be the player he is, because it made me feel a little bit better about myself.
That's the thing.
It weren't just you.
The thing is, I think for fullbacks, it's the worst place to get old. Because you're constantly one-on-one.
No wingers getting at you now.
In your day, you're constantly left one-on-one with wingers. You deal with that. Midfield, you can sort of cheat a little bit and manage your way through. But because didn't Gary Neville throw it in after Jerome Thomas?
Something like that. And the thing about it, the way us footballers our pride is set up. When somebody you think's inferior to you does you. And then you go, give it a chance. Maybe it was I had a night off or a day off. Yeah. And it happens again. Yeah. Thinking, what's wrong with me?
Yeah, I know.
And then it's a battle in your mind to say, do I want to quit now?
Yeah.
I've done enough. Have I done enough? I don't want to go out of the game with no dignity and people just laughing at me. Yeah. I'm not that guy. Yeah, so that's when you got to probably look at it and probably knock it on the head.
Yeah.
But it is a hard decision to make, It is a very, very hard decision. But
time waits for no man, Coley.
It doesn't. And that's why I always say to the kids of nowadays, just enjoy it, man.
Yeah.
Whilst you're in your prime, you can run about. Make sure you enjoy it.
Make sure you run.
Make sure you run,
yeah. Because one day you won't be able to.
You don't have the choice. You don't have the choice. But listen, there's a lot of things that's happened.
Well, we need to talk about the collective.
Oh!
The collective.
Listen.
That's what we did
before. Okay, so as you know, we're all great, tight mates. And
we had our monthly night out, didn't we?
We had our monthly night out the other day. And this was the debrief.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
It was a beautiful time spent with friends and other friends as well.
Yeah.
Bridgie got us an invite to a wedding.
Yeah.
Man attracts people, didn't
They invited us to the stag do as well.
And the stag do and a wedding we got invited to whilst we was out.
All 8 of us.
Yeah. And
do you reckon his missus will wake up to want to go, table plans? Where do we
I wonder if they split us up or stick us together.
I reckon Sunday morning they go, listen, we can put Carlton there. Joe could be there. We'll put him.
So we had a great time.
It was a good vibe, wasn't it?
Yeah.
My mate picked the venue and the DJ was good.
DJ was good.
Chris
Stussy.
Big up Chris Dussy, by the way. Thank you. Bringing the vibes.
Yeah, good vibes.
Good people there.
I told you about as I walked in. You're a bit conscious, isn't you? Because there's a lot of younger people in there.
Yeah, we did look quite old.
Some girls going, oh look, the oldies are here. She's like, grab my chocolate. Oh, like, she's like, cute. Like, leave that life.
Leave it out. The oldies are here.
Yeah. We run the show after that.
Everyone walking past.
Yeah,
didn't they?
We were leading the way after that. And after that spurred us on to do more.
It was a good night. Great night. All safe. All good. And then, should we get on to a bit of football?
Yeah, why not? Listen, we could talk about our lives till the cows come in, but we're here to talk football, aren't we?
Yeah.
So, listen, man.
City Arsenal.
The results. There were some results that have come in.
Mate.
What do you think, Bridgie? Like, the City Arsenal game, that's
your old team. What's happened?
Just like there's no pressure, is there? Just like, do you know when I thought when Arsenal sometimes had the ball near goal, there was no real pressure on them. Easy to find space.
Yeah.
And then, like, when someone's running for the ball, no one was urgent or there's no urgency to get down and close it down. Their pressing's just nowhere near what it used to be. Rodri's just missed massively, isn't he?
Mate, if ever... You know one of them, right, that old saying, sometimes you play your best games when you're not in the team because you're missed. Rodri's done his ACL and his value's doubled.
Yeah.
Because he's like, everyone's going, wow, how good is this geezer?
Yeah.
You're right. All season, they've been off it and Pep's been like, do I play Kovacic? I don't know where Rico Lewis has gone. He says, there's just no legs in the midfield. Arsenal just kept breaking through them.
Counter-attacks just going quick, weren't they? It's just sometimes the pass around at back. I get everyone wants to play football. Or do you just watch it and thinking, oh, no, there's going to be a mistake here, bad pass, getting closed down. Arsenal press really well.
They
did press well.
They do. They're organised with their press and they're aggressive. I mean, one of the big things, the big points that people wanted to see was Haaland against Gabriel and Saliba because of like what he said, the stay humble shout. You know, I mean, there's a little bit of needle between these two teams, isn't there?
Stay humble, yeah.
You could see it.
Humble,
You could see it with them two from the start. Haaland was buzzing to get his goal, wasn't he? Then it just...
It was a great goal as well. Proper old-fashioned striker's goal on the far post. Bosh.
Yes, bosh.
I love them type of goals, but yeah, the fact that it was 1-1 at the start of the second half.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, how did it go so horribly wrong after that?
I don't know.
For City, because like I think they should have been down anyway.
Yeah.
That Havertz chance.
He had a great chance and he just pulled it wide.
Yeah. That's him though, like he's...
he's got to put that in there. He's on the penalty spot. He's got two players in front of him and a goalkeeper. Just find the target.
To be fair, you can see he's tried putting it right in the bottom corner. He's just dragged it, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean...
But you're supposed to be of the level where you're hitting targets from there. You don't drag it. You can't. It's not Dragon's Den.
I think, the Arsenal players have come in for the Arsenal players come in with a lot of stick. Obviously, they like to celebrate when they win a game. They like the needle, don't they?
Yeah.
You know, very much so from their manager, Mikel Arteta. That's his personality on the sideways. Him and his staff all up, and that sort of filters this way into the players. Like so, Miles Kelly, who I think is brilliant. I love his feisty, his attitude. Looks like a top player, but he done the Haaland celebration.
Yeah,
that's cold.
Disrespectful.
You knew what he was doing.
That's disrespectul, innit? Listen, mate. When I was coming through the youth, and I've got first. I'm not even thinking about doing that.
No.
Like, seeing that, but because he's got a little bit about himself, the boy, I don't actually mind it because I'm thinking, okay, so he actually felt it last time and he wasn't even playing back then.
Yeah.
That you disrespected my manager, now I'm going to give it back.
Yeah.
That for me shows a little bit of character for me, and I love players with character. See, like when I first broke into the Chelsea squad, my character was, I can't take no rubbish here.
Yeah.
I can't have my own teammates taking the mick out of me or taking advantage of me because I'm young. Yeah, we know what happened there after that. I'm not going to go into it. But I had to stamp my authority on that team. It was stamped, but I wasn't looking at it like that at the time.
Yeah.
And then everybody else said, you know what? He's got a bit about himself, him. Do you know what I mean? Like after that escapade, and then after that, like people started to treat me a little bit different, and I noticed the difference, and I was like, okay, and I was still around the first team. I thought I'd be sacked off. I was like, well, I'm still here. So everyone shows their maturity in different ways of getting into the first team, and I think that's how he's doing it. Saying, you know, messing around my team, we'll have a little joke back. You know what I mean? It's only a joke. Come on,
sorry, Bridget. I do like that about the Arsenal team, that they're feisty, they're horrible, and they're nasty. We was like that at Chelsea. But what I think the over celebrating stuff.
They've done that quite a lot.
And I know people going, "I don't," you know, it's good. I'm just thinking for them, like
it just comes back on you.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, like Haaland's coming back for them at some point, mate. Don't you worry about that. It's coming back to haunt them again.
He's gone to bed in his oxygen chamber, and all he can think of is scoring against Arsenal. He's going to be, and he's thinking, "I'm going to smash Kelly. I'm going to do that. He's going to get it." Like that's what you do if you over celebrate. So we was always talking.
It's going to be a thing going forward, them two, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's praying for his downfall right now, and he's praying for it. I don't like bad energy, but if you get into that ring, man, you got to be able to back it, bro.
Yeah, if you're going to be a bear, be a grizzly one.
That's the man. I like that.
That's what you get on the Dressing Room podcast. Bit of philosophy.
Yeah, I love that.
We want a little bit of talk about, you know, the criticism for players in the era of social media. Easier not to read, Bridgie. Players are bombarded every day on every platform. Like, what? We never had to handle it, did we? So
no, you just had the papers, didn't you? So
I thought the papers were nastier. In some
used to be.
I don't know. Yeah,
it used to be, because that's the only channel of disrespect you was ever going to get. So they made you know about it.
It's non-stop now, though, isn't it? Yeah. It's going to constantly be happening. There's going to be memes all the time. It is non-stop.
But here's my thing. You can, the papers were one thing that we all got our newspapers from. So if something was read in the paper, you know that most of the people in football would... Yeah. That was where we all got our information. If someone digs you out on social media, it's coming for you, it can be going round, but you still got the ability to turn the power off, right? And not listen to it.
That's true.
I remember I was once called by a journalist in a Daily Mirror. Mate, I was reading... He did it as an opinion column. I'm sitting there reading it. He called me a ball-juggling little git.
Oh, wow.
That my parents should be ashamed of.
What?
I'm like, oh, mate.
Are you reading this?
I'm knowing that. You know, like when you're about to have a fight in the playground, it's like, oh no, he said that.
Oh no, you're gonna let him get away with that, bruv.
Mate, and I'm like, when I see this geezer, and I never ever saw him. I won't say his name. I won't even, because that was personal. Yeah, you know what I mean? That was like. That was your character, and it's a little bit of a ball juggling little git. Can be that. Your parents should be ashamed.
Yeah, why?
I don't even remember what I'd done. I think he was accusing me of going down too easily. But
that would have annoyed me more. I think the parent shout.
Yeah, I know.
But then I think in this day and age, that's why I love Glenn Hoddle from when I first started. He's done a lot of work on the mental side of the game. But I also think since retiring, I've changed the way I think sometimes, even more over the last few weeks. I think everyone's just different. There's comments like that is kind of like, I always think, if you've had a bad game, so if they say it, I'll kind of accept it. It's when they haven't, and it's like, well, like when they're saying that about you, the ball juggling, you're not though, are you?
Yeah.
That ain't you.
Yeah.
So it's you just got to accept, oh, well, he says that, so what?
Yeah.
Get on with it. It doesn't really matter what he says.
It took me a long time to, like...
It might be more than one, though, Carl.
Maybe they're onto something then, isn't it?
It's as a person, innit? I think you've got to work on that yourself in terms of... But things used to make me angry, and you want to go and, like...
Prove them wrong.
Yeah, just... You know what? Or just have a word with them and go, have a look at yourself, mate.
I had the same.
Being calm in yourself and accepting. I always think if I've had a bad game, I know I'm going to get a bad review or whatever. But then sometimes I've had bad reviews. I think, I think I've done all right. So. But obviously, I think the more I've grown up, I wish I'd been like I am now than what it was when I was playing something a bit more.
Yeah, I was on social media. One of the first footballers on social media. I remember.
You're a trailblazer, yeah?
I was one of the first, because I remember walking into the Chadwell Leaf training ground at West Ham, and Matthew Upson. Remember?
Yeah.
Matthew Upson comes up to me, and I was like looking at my phone, and it was on Twitter at the time, and I was getting barrages of abuse.
Right. Yeah.
And I showed Matthew Upson. He goes, "Coley, why are you on there? Like, why are you leaving yourself open for people to be able to contact you and tell you how bad you are?"
Why do you think people do it though?
That's mad. What kind of
they are looking for the positive stuff?
No. So I went on there because I wanted to have contact with the fans. Just how I am, innit? I'm a social butterfly. I love
you
it.
See it on Saturday from both
yeah. I love it. I love being. I love having like interaction with fans and that, and it's just me, innit?
Yeah.
So when I saw this opportunity, say, social media, why not have a look on that? Yeah. But I accepted that I'm gonna have to take the rough with the smooth, the good and the bad. So there's nothing wrong. I look at it and think, I never. All right. There was a few times, obviously, and it's quite infamously, I've got into trouble.
You was one of the first online
guys to
get done by the FA, right?
Yes, I was.
Mate, you do that? Yeah, this is a belter. This is a belter.
Oh, mate. So I think it was Rio Ferdinand was on there. He's one of the culprits that get done.
Yeah.
My thing was, there was twice. I got done twice. One for a joke, and one for just protecting myself a little bit.
Right, okay.
All right? I'll tell you both.
Go on.
All right? So the first one was someone said something to me on... I think we just got beat by Spurs.
Right.
And Sam Allardyce was the gaffer at the time. Or even before... No, I don't even know if it might have been Ali Kirbishley, one of the two. But I can't... All I remember is this guy just coming for me. Like, says, your manager's pet. Yeah? And something. I can't repeat the words.
Yeah.
And C *** T.
Right, okay.
Call me something. Yeah? I was like, okay, cool, no problem. I said, your mum is a ***.
Oh my God.
Well, that was a schoolboy playground. You know, in playground.
That's it, you just got to think a little bit, not rush into it.
Well, I didn't swear. I used the ***. But I was referring to, I was insinuating that you are this thing. So read between the lines. That's it.
Yeah.
Next morning, I'll walk in. I get a call from Karen Brady. Karen,
oh no!
I've gone. Oh no! Here we go. What's happened? Because I didn't.
New deal.
New deal. You proud of me? I knew something was going to be something to do with the Twitter. I've gone. All right, cool, no problem. But my bad for biting. I bit. Because, as you said, you got to take the rough with the smooth. I was just trying to take the smooth all the time. And the rough, I'd just cane it off. And I'd done it in the way I felt was sensible at the time in my head. And it wasn't sensible because I got done. I had to go to the FA, and I remember having to walk in the FA to the quarters at Wembley. Go to Wembley. You sit around a round table, a little bit like this.
Yes, yeah.
Like a big round table. I'm like, oh, here we go. Yeah. Sit down, and there's a panel.
Yeah.
And then I looked at that panel, I was like, I'm getting done here. They don't like me. I was like, that was the first time, so they've gone 20 grand, bosh, right? I was like, 20 bags? I was like, I ain't got enough money to pay it. I'm living wrongly. Please. I haven't got enough money in the bank to pay that one go. I'll be in debt. And I was looking at Caribbean, can you pay it for me? So it was either that or they was going to give me a 3-match ban. I was like, 3-match ban? So we said, we'll take the fine. Anyway, next one. This was about probably a year later.
Right, okay.
Yeah? I think there was a joke being said. I was in the England squad. There was a joke being said. And I just remember, like, my mate said the joke, and he's actually a comedian.
Right, okay.
Kojo the comedian. Look him up. He's quite funny. Very funny, actually.
Yeah.
And I was quite tight with him. And you see me, my character, I love...
We love jokes.
We love jokes. Want to be happy.
Yeah.
Mate, he said this immigration joke, right?
Right, okay.
England were playing Ghana. I weren't in the squad. I was injured. England were playing Ghana.
Right.
So I was at home watching it. And I was like, you was probably in the squad as well. Yeah. You lot was in the squad. And I was just texting. He texts, don't go, to the England-Ghana game, if you haven't got your papers correct and you're Ghanaian, That's immigration papers, right? So whether you should be here or not, it's questionable. That's what, mate. And then I actually retweeted it. Yeah, I retweeted it. It wasn't my joke. It actually weren't my joke. It was someone else's joke, my mate's joke. I retweeted it. I walk into training the next day. And who was it? Carlton, could you come into the office, please? Karen again.
Oh, no.
And then she says, haven't you learned? I said, I didn't swear, Karen.
I didn't swear.
He said, so they go, you're going to have to go to the FA again. So I've had to trot over to the FA again the next couple of days it was. And then it was like, so I sat down, and this time I sat down, and then it was the same panel again.
Yeah.
Sat down, and I knew straight away.
Really?
Back again, innit? But then I was like, I can't get fined for this for someone else's joke.
Yeah.
And it's not even a joke. It's not a serious joke. It's it's a joke. And it's an inside joke as well, because basically what it was, it's like something that you say between African nations.
Yeah.
So about immigration. So it's a common thing in the African community.
Right.
This panels are full of old, middle-aged, older white guys.
Yeah.
They don't get that sort of banter.
Of course.
So for me to explain that, it's just never going to work.
Yeah.
They're not down. They don't understand it.
Yeah.
So it was just all wrong. I was always going to get fined another 20 grand. I got fined again.
Mate.
So that's
where does that money go as well? That's another thing.
Wait a minute. So I was like, okay, I'm 40 grand down. Now, fast forward to today.
Yeah.
I'm seeing so much players swearing, effing and saying anything they want.
Yeah.
That's why I always say, I want my 40 grand back. I want to be reimbursed.
Reimbursed, Cole. FA, we're coming for you.
Yeah, because that's not fair. How are they getting away with it and I'm not?
I'll be interested to know. I'd love to know where that money goes.
I want to know now.
Yeah,
we find out.
I got fined 18 grand at Chelsea and a 2-match ban. Have you ever been fined?
To be fair...
Not by your club, by the FA.
Oh, no, not like, no.
You're such a goody two-shoes.
And when I did get fined by the club, they let me off.
Did they?
Yeah.
What, with a yellow card or a red card or something?
No, it's something naughty I did. You don't need to go into that right now. I think I've sold it.
They let you off?
Yeah, Sparky fined me 2 weeks' wages, and the lads were laughing,
Sparky,
to be honest.
Mark Hughes,
Yeah. Mark Hughes. And then, to be honest, like, all the lads were laughing, and they were like, oh, my God, 2 weeks' wages. So I think everyone was like a little bit like, better not step out of line. Then he pulled me to the side like a month later, so I won't do. Everyone knows not to mess around now.
Good management.
Yeah, that's good. That's good, that, innit?
It looked like you setting a
I thought it was harsh. Like, well, it probably wasn't harsh, but yeah.
Right, well...
would you use social media? Oh, I don't think I'd use it if I was playing.
I just think...
Because I don't know, because you're always like... You've got to put the good stuff on the bad stuff. Do you know what I mean? I see, like... I like Lewis Dunk because I played with him at Brighton, and he put something kind of about the players and sorry and that. I get it, but I just think it'd be easier to just to stay off it.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Easier to stay off it.
You know what you said? Like, you wouldn't use it, but that's because we've been brought through an era where it wasn't there, and now it's everywhere. It's like, you know, we grew up, so like, you had the telephone in your house. Like, imagine, and that's a bad example, but technology is always there. They don't know the world without social media. Do you know what I mean? So it's like,
I guess it's one of them things as well.
It's just part of what they do.
Got a boot sponsorship and things like that. They want you
works,
to have it and all that stuff. Yeah,
advertisement.
I went on it.
Sort of stuff.
I went on it until I retired.
You're not on Twitter yet.
No, I'm not yet, but because the only reason I retired, BT Sports wanted to give me a contract, and I was like, yeah, right, okay, finish football. I'm going to talk football now. Do that as a job. And they went, no, but we'll only take you if you have a social media presence. So I was like, all right, so what one do you want? And Tel sat me down this one. You had like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, blah, blah, a few of the other ones. I went, well, I don't know. I can't do them all. Like, I don't. So then Terry just done it for me. And what I would say is addictive.
The players, though. Reckon they do some? Do you reckon they do their own?
Yeah. Judging by some of them, some of them are definitely doing their own. They're getting in trouble.
I pop in and pop out. Do you know what I mean? Because I recognise how addictive it is, and having kids of my own. Sort of. I want to be a good example. Imagine I'm sitting there and I'm strolling round like
you're not present, are you?
Yeah.
You're not
so
being present.
I try to step back, but I do pop in and say, hello and
what up, people? My people.
Back, Man United seem to do one step forward and one step back.
It does, yeah. Wow, seamless.
That is,
seamless transition.
So look, as you said, one step forward, one step back for Manchester United. So. My thing, Bridgie, on this one, right? Like, how do you have like 3 strikers, in Xerxes, Rashford, and Højlund? They start this game at home to Palace, and none of them they're there to be seen. Like,
I know.
How bad must they be when your gaffer?
How bad would they feel, Coley, knowing that they're playing a holding midfielder as a number 9?
If you're sat there, you're thinking, what have I got to do? Or
It's the ultimate insult, isn't it?
Yeah, obviously Rashford, he's been outspoken. Like, he's not doing this right, he's not doing that. But if you're the others, you'd be like...
Yeah.
You probably knock on the door and have a word when you're being told something, surely.
How you as a striker, because strikers, we're delicate creatures.
Yeah.
And very delicate creatures. And our confidence, we thrive on confidence.
You're the front man of the band, didn't you?
You know what I mean? Like, we need to...
You're the front man
Come
of
on,
the band.
we need something more. We need our gaffer to believe in us. We need an arm around us. Your man management for a striker has to be totally different to how you treat the other players. I know that sounds crazy, but it just is.
I think everyone's different. Everyone's got different personality, I think. That's when man management really shows, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how the different man managements, how you get treated differently throughout the year. Like, Jose would... He had me on a bit of string. Like he'd sort of like he'd ostracise me. Like, won't talk to me. Like, absolutely, like, batter me in front of the lads. And then there'll be a game where I played well, and he'd make a beeline for me on the pitch. And he'd like Barcelona, when we beat Barcelona in the quarterfinals, and he made a beeline for me, like, you know, like it was like Kevin Costner looking for Whitney Houston, like, no, when he's coming over to me after the game, I'm thinking, what have I done wrong? And he's come round, he's going round to the fans, he's going, God, look him, blind. I'm like, yeah.
It's great when he does that. When he's ever given me a pat on the back, it feels good.
And because he was like that with me, so he took the mentality, because he knew that I'd be the type of character that would, I want that, I'd be doing that. And only like 10 years, 15 years later, then you realise how smart it is. Maybe it wouldn't last for... That's probably why he leaves clubs after 2, 3, 4 years, because it's a hard relationship, you know what I mean?
Runs out.
It was interesting. But Amorim, I don't know what he's got to do to get them firing. They're like...
And the thing about it, listen, Amorim, he's a young manager and he's going to make mistakes on the way.
Yeah.
And the way he treats his players, especially the players that he's got at his disposal now, is going to dictate where they're going to finish up this season in the league.
Yeah.
He's walking a tightrope, because he can blame the players all he wants. He can make it look like it's not his fault.
Yeah.
He can make it look like it's upstairs' fault.
Yeah.
But the buck stops at his doorstep.
Yeah.
And he's got to make the right decisions. Obviously, against Palace.
Yeah.
I know it's a little bit of a smash and grab from Palace.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it happened, it worked in Palace's favour. You got Mateta scoring 2 goals. You're looking at his strike force, and Palace's strike force is firing, and yours is not.
Mate.
They need a smash and grab right now, Manchester United.
It didn't start Eze.
So it just shows you, when you've got a fit and raring striker, and a confident striker at that. Mateta is very confident at the moment.
You saw that the way he took his goals. It's nothing. Just smooth, bang, boom, boom.
And I love the way he's come on leaps and bounds.
Yeah.
Just because he's got a manager that believes in him.
He's a big size as well, isn't he, Geese? He looked like them Dorman from Saturday night. His shoulders are like that.
Yeah. Not tonight, son. You're not getting in.
No, you talk about the confidence. Like, you see Everton.
Yeah.
Like what he's saying, it's just a confidence thing. He's giving the boys confidence.
Energy.
Look at the difference in them.
Yeah.
It is massive what a bit of confidence can do for you.
It is.
Because when you get that and you start playing well, like I remember just being at Chelsea and you're playing well and you're getting results, you literally go out there thinking you're going to get a win.
Yeah.
There's no negative feelings, it's just all confidence.
It's good. The Moisaya, as they like to call him.
The Moisaya.
Moisaya at West Ham.
Started that West Ham.
Mate, he's just... I get it, first of all, him going back there, back to Everton. And you know, people would go, well, it's like for like, innit, Sean Dyche? But he's walking in there with swagger now. Because what he done at West Ham was quite incredible, really. Then 3 years, Coley, you know, the European campaigns, winning the Conference League, the top 5 finishes, top 6 finishes. Like, he's strolling back into Everton, a club he knows, with so much swagger. And you're right. That's what... Boys have looked at him, and he would have been so assured, he's got, this is our guy. Yeah, I don't think they're doing much different tactically, are they? No. He's got Beto going. You know, they're strong at the back, good organisation.
He's probably gone in and given them a proper good talk and And
that is what football's all about. I told you that, we've talked about this before. If you believe in the manager, and you can see a direction and a pathway to success, you're gonna go with it because he's clear. He's decisive.
Yeah.
And he makes, you can see in his eyes as well.
Yeah.
When you're talking to your gaffer and you can see in his eyes that he knows what he's doing. He's not looking left or right. He's looking at you.
Yeah.
You're just thinking, I've got to produce here as a player. I've got no choice, or else I ain't playing next week. Someone else is going to come and take my place. Yeah. So, respect to David Moyes. There was never a doubt.
Yeah,
there was never a doubt.
The Everton fans were doubting it, I think. Cole was definitely doubting it.
Yeah.
Cole was.
Judging by his dancing on Saturday night.
Toe tap.
The man was doing Tai Chi.
Tai Chi on the dance floor.
It's fantastic.
You should see it, yeah.
But Liverpool beat Bournemouth. I think we all talked about that game last week and said this could be a struggle for them.
Mate, they had some chances, Bournemouth, though.
Yeah.
They did have some chances.
Yeah. What do you make of Bournemouth down there on the south coast?
I got booed every time I went there. I didn't realise they hated Southampton so much.
Really?
You didn't
realise? I went back there. Well, I knew that I knew Portsmouth.
Yeah.
But I remember I went back at the end of my career with Reading. I think it was my last game because I had a knee op, and I was 60 minutes in. And I thought, no, I'm done now. I couldn't turn anymore.
Yeah.
And it was my last ever. I think it was my last game. And I was literally getting booed.
Really?
Yeah, it was horrible.
So your last ever game and they booed you off?
I think it might have been.
See, horrible people, what you've done?
Yeah.
Nicest man in
football.
Finished him off.
But yeah, I didn't realise that the hatred was there that much.
Is it that close?
Yeah, it's close. Yeah.
Do you know what?
It's close.
How many goals did you score in your career?
Oh my God, I should remember, but not many.
Right, okay, because
two for Saints.
Two of my earliest, two of my best memories.
I know where you're going.
Where you did score.
Yeah.
These 2 goals. One of them was obviously the Arsenal goal. I was on the pitch. And when he scored, it was just like it was amazing.
Yeah.
One of the biggest goals in Chelsea's history. But the other one, he scored a belter against Portsmouth. Right? He just signed from Southampton.
Is it?
Right. But Coley, right? If you please, people, go and find this goal and look at this man's face. The joy. They were digging you out, and he's run right past me, and I'm just like, he was so fast.
I ran across the other side of the pitch.
No way.
Telling everyone to get away from me. I was up to the Portsmouth fan.
Yeah.
I got so close to him, and I swear they were just trying to punch me. He's grabbed me, trying to pull me back, thinking I'm going to get hit.
Because you're from London, I'm like, Southampton. But you don't realise the
rivalry.
The rivalry, and if Southampton,
actually,
brilliant.
One of my mates must have thought, he's from Portsmouth. He must have thought it'd been funny to give my number out. And that night, I was getting phone calls constantly from Portsmouth fans giving me stick. And I was actually sat at home. Didn't go out after the game. And Match of the Day was on. So I got this phone call, and it was another one. I went, hold on, mate, wait there. So I put the goal on, I played it really loud. I said, have a listen to this. And I was playing it down the phone to them. I had to change my number after that.
Social media before social media was about.
That's crazy. But look, that game, obviously, Liverpool.
They had chances. Clive had chances.
Yeah.
I wanted to come off.
Mate, on his right foot.
Yeah, come off
is
the
he
side.
left-footed, Clive?
Right-footed, but he's both, mate. I've seen him strike the ball lovely both sides.
Yeah, like, I was surprised he didn't put that in the net. And then you got, obviously, Liverpool. Listen, when you're defending against Mo Salah, and you're showing him onto his left as well, he's only going one place, isn't it? You know what he's going to do. You got to show him onto his right. Every defender, every left back, right?
It's horrible though, because you get too tight.
Because you're a left back, Brizzy.
He's chopping you. You have got to get tight.
You got to get tight. So is that the thing? So if you was defending against Mo Salah, what would you do?
Trying to get to him as he's getting the ball.
Right. Okay.
So he ain't got to run on you.
Right, okay.
And then
you need
someone. If he squares you up, you want someone coming in to help you.
Yeah. Okay.
And then now scream, you show him down the line because you know that someone's covering you inside.
Okay.
But first and foremost, is literally you're trying to get on his touch straight away.
Okay.
And if you ain't, then.
Yeah, then there's a danger.
Plan B, mate. Where's my help? Where's my help?
With my cover.
Help me.
Help.
Well, like I say, you've got to get close because you just know what he's going to do, don't you?
True. He surpasses Frank Lampard in the Premier League's all-time top scorer.
Does he?
You know, he's 21 goals so far this season with 13 assists to go with it. In the 23 games he had featured this season. That's incredible numbers. He's putting up better numbers than he has done all of his career.
How he ain't got another contract yet. How they ain't sorted him out yet. It's just... What plan have they got? Or maybe you don't know, do you?
I don't know what's going on.
I don't think I think he's thinking.
He's not bothered.
I think he's playing so well. He's been able to just put it all to the side, and he's looking at. They could win 4 trophies this year, and imagine walking out of Liverpool's as of Mo Salah having just won the Champions League. You know, we've all talked about him. The Saudi move might suit him at each stage of his career.
Yeah.
You know, everything, it makes sense, but he has to. I'm happy he's staying now, because to finish this job, this could be a momentous season.
Yeah.
He's one of the all-time greats
Yeah.
in the Premier League, and listen, he can financially, money-wise, he go anywhere he wants in the world and get what he wants, because he's one of the top players. Yeah.
No, kudos to him. He's one of the best players in the world. He's getting to a point in his life where he's in the driver's seat now, still doing the business as well. That's the crazy part about it. He's not on the downer. He's not going off.
He ain't going off.
Yeah, he's not going nowhere.
Yeah.
Like, so it just depends what he wants to do now. I'd love to be in a position like that. Near the end of your career.
Then? Do you reckon
At his age, he was in Borneo.
Oh, mate.
I was in Florida.
Hey,
how old is he?
I was thinking of jumping off the plane over there. Just in
33, 34.
Yeah, I was done.
Yeah,
he don't look like he's done at all, mate.
No.
He's still in great shape, isn't he?
Great shape. Just had his Barnet done as well.
Oh,
he looks
mate.
amazing.
Flying, isn't he?
Yeah, we've all done that. Well, a few of us.
Flying. Well done, Mo. Well done.
Right. Chris Wood, hat-trick. I was at the game, right?
Yeah, go on, talk us through it.
Like, first of all, they set up with a back 5 because they got beat 5-0 by Bournemouth the week before. So we interviewed the man, Nuno, before, and then we interviewed the Brighton manager as well. And you just got a sense from Nuno that was a calm, cool, collected man. And then I watched it, they set up, and it was Alanga playing off of Wood. And you know when 2 players just bounce off each other so well? Because Alanga's like lightning. He was running in behind.
Little and large.
Little and large, mate. It was old school. It was like the 1990s again. Forrest there was bang.
Nothing wrong with it.
Yeah. And he was brilliant, Chris Wood. The finish from the header when he's peeled off to the far post from Alanga's cross. His hold-up play. And I was talking to Crouchy about him. You know, always, when you speak to footballers, and if they give a player the seal of approval, you know...
And it's the same type of player.
Crouchy said when he was at Burnley, he was shocked how good a finisher Ashley Barnes and in particular Chris Wood were. He said, he said, wow. He said, Coley, I'm promising you. He said, I promise you, he can do everything. He can finish everywhere. Left foot, right foot, head in.
And I'm like, size as well.
And I'm like, and I look at his career, and he's scored goals everywhere he's gone. You know, you're like, he's 34, 17. I think it was 17 goals this year.
Yeah.
It's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Did you watch him, Bridgie?
I've watched him. Yeah, he's good, mate. Like I said, he's underrated. Isn't he? I think just underrated.
Yeah,
he can finish. He can score all types of goals.
Yeah,
strong, quick. I'd say he's probably underrated. Yeah, definitely.
I said it and I got laughed out of it. I was on a show about a year ago, right? And we were talking about solutions for Arsenal's problem, not having a striker. And you're looking at it and it was like, we can't get Mbappe because he's gone there. And da-da-da-da. And I was like, what about Chris Wood? They laughed at me.
That's a great shout.
I said to him, look, if you're a manager or sitting on the bench or Arteta, you don't have to play him every game, but there'll be certain games and certain periods of games where you need someone to change it up. You know what I mean? He ain't going to let you down. And he'll have the... Imagine you go, Nottingham Forest, this is a year ago. There's 10 million, or might even not even cost that. Give him a 2-year contract. He's thinking, I could go to Arsenal and win something in my career. I might not be the starter. I might be... It's a great deal. He would have... I think... I said it. I got laughed out of the studio.
Listen,
when did you say that?
A while ago.
Not many people laughing now, mate. That's a good shout.
Yeah. But you know what, Bridget, as well? Like, you've got to look at it like this way as well. Because I think the best managers and the best recruiters, I'd say, head of recruitment, they think outside the box.
Yeah.
Low cost, does the same thing that you want your striker to do, Yeah. And it's not really that much. There's no risk.
Yeah.
There's actually no risk because it's low money.
Yeah.
So what's the risk? He comes in, he's happy to be there, he's going to try. There's a few times that's happened though. There's a few, like you do see odd transfers where you think, well, he's come from there to there. He's not that of that quality. But no, he's come in to do a job, a particular job that's needed at that moment in time for that football club. Whether they're in the Champions League or not, it just depends if that player can fill in that role.
Yeah.
And it just might be the missing piece to make everything tick. Not saying that's going to be your main player.
Yeah. Going back to Ashley Barnes, you say Crouchy said...
Both of them. He particularly said...
I was with him at Brighton. Fans didn't like him.
Really?
I was playing, but, mate, I thought he was brilliant.
Two players.
Work rate, holding up the ball, getting stuck in and finishing.
Yeah.
Mate, he'd always pop up and score goals.
Yeah.
Like, he was good.
Yeah.
He let himself down occasionally, like sending offs and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I think he tripped the lino up or something like that. Not the lino, the ref. I think he tripped the ref up. The ref gave him a yellow card. Went to run off, so he tripped him up. That's an absolute classic. I'm just laughing, but the manager...
I need to see this. It'll be on YouTube.
Hey, I'm sure it will be. I'm sure it was. Give him a yellow card, run off, so he tripped him up.
What you do with it?
But he was good, mate. That's what I mean. That's why it's interesting to know, like, people like Chris Wood, I think he is underrated, but Crouch is saying that about him, like, fans. Yeah. And I know, even my mate Luke, who was out of us Saturday, he didn't really rate Ashley that well. I thought he was great, mate. Brilliant, yeah.
Do you know what? It's just funny, right? Because the game's gone very data-driven, isn't it? So that, but actually, if I'm gonna sign a player, have a manager, and I know he's at your club, and I know I trust your opinion because we've dealt with each other. I'm like, I'd ask you, and that is invaluable to me. There's so many. It might be a player that doesn't show up on the statistics and data, but if like Crouchy sent that to me, that's how Harry Redknapp used to do a lot of it. It's where you to go and put a lot of the hard yards in watching players, but a lot of it was your network of people.
It's always that.
You've got good people around you who can
direct you in the right way.
And players know players.
Yeah, of course.
Do you know what I mean? Players
I always
know
talk
players.
to, like, even my role with the loans, like, I'll always go and get a second opinion from the under-21 manager, Mark Robson.
Yeah.
Because and Gerard Penderville.
Yeah.
And obviously Steve Potts.
Yeah.
And they will give you an overview about the player that you're thinking, will he play? Well, what level can he play? Can he play League One, League Two, Championship? What do you think is going to be good for his progression?
Yeah.
You go and ask those questions, and then they'll give you positive feedback, not positive, but honest feedback.
Yeah.
On because I have my data, and I'll use the data with our data analysis specialist,
right?
And he'll tell us, okay, and then also we're in we're in AI, the AI era now, and AI will tell you exactly what is what. But what AI won't tell you is the spirit of the player.
Yeah.
When is he up for that player? Character of the player.
Yeah.
And sometimes those elements, that human element, that AI is not going to pick that up. Data ain't going to pick that up. You'd look at a player and you think, wow, not sure about him, but all his stats are added up to unbelievable stats. He does everything it says on the tin. But really and truly, you put him from that club into another club, it's not going to work because his spirit's not there. He doesn't want to be there. So there's a load of other things you have to bring in.
Yeah.
And that's why I always say with the head of recruitment, you can't just go on data and stats. It's got to be the human element.
Yeah. Was it Brighton? I think Tony Bloom went a lot on data.
Yeah. Brighton and Brentford were sort of like trailblazers for it. But most clubs do it. But it's like an art to it. And what apparently this is why are they so good at it, identifying players and getting bargains? It's because they build up the data and they have a certain small team that do it. And it's all right getting data, is how do you decipher it?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But I still think there's a real place in football for eyes, good trusted eyes on players, and also instinct and gut intuition on a player.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just look at a player and I don't know why I'm just like, I just don't think you'll be for me. Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
You know?
We'll talk about...
And it's like the attitude of the way they react to things that don't go their way. I think that's what I notice more.
Yeah. I remember
good reactions after things, and
it's like especially
mistakes and stuff.
Especially at Chelsea, when I saw certain it'd be like we'd sign. Obviously, Chelsea are signing top players wherever they are. They're a top player, whether they come from Portugal or Spain and all that. And I'd always have this thing where after 3 or 4 games, I'd be like, "No, it's not going to work for them." Do you know what I mean? It'll be something. It'll be like a reaction to losing the ball, or like a moaning or something like. And you're usually more right than wrong. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
I tell you, I noticed that with Chelsea, Kesman.
Yeah.
Because him and Mourinho,
I got shipped out because of him.
Him and Mourinho went at it a few times.
Yeah.
And I think then they just had a thing after that.
Yeah.
Mourinho would always dig him out.
Yeah,
they
I remember.
Had a proper Barney in the change room, didn't they?
Yeah, he would spike. He's an agent now, isn't he? I remember it obviously didn't work for him, did it? But
no.
But yeah, I think the character that he was confrontational.
Yeah.
You had to be like, you could argue with Josie, but you had to know when to do it and when not to do it. Yeah, that's a fair point.
We're talking about, like, that's a striker. We're talking about Chris Wood. So Chris Wood's unbelievable. European. So now, when you look at Nuno Espirito, really and truly, that is the position that Nottingham Forest, for me, should be in Manchester United's position right now. They should be vice versa right now. Manchester United should be in the European qualifying for Europe right now, in that position to threatening.
Yeah.
But Nuno is doing this. It's Portuguese, Nuno.
Yeah.
So the other Portuguese lad is doing better than him at the moment.
Yeah, I know.
Amorim must be looking and thinking, what? I'm at Man United. He's at Nottingham Forest. No disrespect to Nottingham Forest. Nottingham Forest are a massive club. We know that history-wise. But Manchester United must be looking at them thinking, that is our place.
Yeah.
Like, how...
Forest must be on a massive confidence.
Yeah. It was rocking at the weekend. Rocking.
So you've got Chris Woods, and this is the whole point of having a striker. Chris Woods knocking in hat-tricks.
Yeah.
And Man United are looking at themselves and thinking, we ain't got a striker. How mad is that?
Yeah,
like, I just don't get what's going on. It's like I'm in an alternate universe right now. It's mad.
It is mad. It is mad.
Look, fair play to Nuno and what he's doing with that team.
Yeah.
But
can they do it, Coley?
I think they can.
Yeah,
mate. The confidence can't when you're at the game.
I think people believe they can now because they've been going. Definitely.
Yeah, that result.
We're past the Christmas period now.
Yeah. We're February.
Yeah. So now it's all about maintaining.
Yeah. And by the way, Danilo was back. Danilo was back fit, and he's a player for them.
He's a player.
There's an extra little cog in the wheel. I don't know whether they'll bring anyone in before the chairman's a bit mad. He couldn't stop signing players, did he? He thought he was in Costco's when he first took the job.
He's buying on wholesale.
No, but you go to Costco's, you go, I'm just going for that, and you end up coming out of a jet ski. He's like,
my missus come out of an olive tree the other day, actually. Yeah.
Cash and carry. It's a cash and carry.
He's toned it down, hasn't he? Toned it down now.
Just buy by the bulk.
Anyway,
I'm like that on TikTok, actually.
Yeah.
Like, I go in there, I go on TikTok just to buy like some shower gels and that, because you get the little bundles. Then I end up buying like
about this. What's this? Shop
have you not been on TikTok Shop?
No.
Cool, blind. Listen out.
Deals,
mate. Deals on wheels, bruv.
You know about this.
Of course I know. Of course you do. Mate, you need to get on TikTok Shop, mate. Yeah. Unbelievable piece of software. Yeah,
please,
go on
I'll
there.
just go to the shop. I don't get these people.
Like, buy the bolt. Listen, the other day, I've got 60 toilet rolls turned up outside my house. It's up to there. I was like, wow, that's brilliant. I don't have to worry about toilet rolls for the rest of the year.
That gives me flashbacks about COVID. I don't ever see big toilet rolls. Anyway, we've done David Moyes breathing back into Spurs. Here we go. What do we say?
What do we say about Spurs?
Spurs.
They won 2-0.
Tamori, Mark Gay and Tell Spurs have been turned down, apparently.
Well, I think, look, first and foremost, let's get into the game with Spurs.
Yeah.
So
yes,
they won 2-0, didn't they?
Yeah.
I think that's a relief for Ange. Ange needs a little day. Needs a day off.
He looked relieved.
He looked relieved.
By the way, I'm not really one for stats, but I watched the game and Spurs' expected goals was 0.75.
Oh, blood.
And Brentford's was 2 point something. So it was a smash and grab.
Yeah.
It was a smash and grab. But sometimes you just need that. When you ain't played as well as you can do and you win a game, it feels like you're in the dressing room and you go with the lads, whoa. It's almost like we're bandits here. We've done them. But they was very, very... Ange looked very relieved, looked like a manager.
He needed it.
And now they got a massive game this week in the semi-final. I think this is make and break for Ange. I think if he gets them to the final, it buys him another 4 weeks, 5 weeks.
It's just like, he's not had no respite, mate.
Yeah.
It's been one thing after the other.
He looks like he's just done, didn't he?
Yeah.
There's
I'm happy for him.
clip of him arguing with the fans afterwards.
Yeah. I know. We've got that. We've got to send a bit of information to play devil's advocate with Levy, because we give him a bit of stick last year.
Yeah.
They spent 300 million on players, a list of them. Some of them are hit, some of them are miss. And then
300 million. How long was the?
I think it's under the Ange era.
Under the Ange era.
But a lot of them, but still, a lot of them will be on low wages in comparison to the top boys. A lot of them, like Archie Graves, going to be a very good young player. Bergvall, look like two young players. I still think the problem lands with him. I know there's been protests at Tottenham with fans and everyone because fans want to see results on the pitch. You know, there's only so many times you go to the mega store. I mean,
the mega store or the F1 go-karting.
Yeah, and so they know that these players will eventually, if Archie Gray and Bergvall become top players, they're going to end up being bought by Barcelona, Real Madrid.
Yeah,
the big boys. You know what I mean? So I think
he's not going anywhere, Levy, though, is he?
Levy's not going nowhere. No, he's on.
Exactly.
No, he basically owns the club.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like when we've talked about it before, is it time? He's never going anywhere.
Not going anywhere, so they've got to accept it.
Never going anywhere, is he? So it's just like...
Yeah. The interesting thing now is, like, if back in the day, right, when ticket prices were a big, massive bulk of... If you're selling 40,000 tickets, like Spurs would have been for years and years at White Hart Lane, and all of a sudden you lose the fans and only 20,000 turn up. That was a massive lot of your revenue. Now the match day revenue, if your hardcore fans don't turn up, if all the Spurs fans turn up and go, no, we're not having this no more. I'm not going to watch my team. I'm going to because of this. They'll sell them to tourists. So it's the strength of the fans is actually diminishing. Yeah. That's why, you know, I think that's the frustration. They feel powerless to this. They want Tottenham to be at the top. Yeah. But they ain't spending the money to do it.
Well, Levy will say they are spending the money, but the problem is, it's the recruitment.
Yeah. You think so? I think
it's recruitment, and I'm not sure how it works at Spurs, but where does the buck stop?
You not think that
if I was the manager and I say to Levy, I said, Levy, Dan, I need players. I need this position. Yeah. I've identified the players I want, whether they're gettable or not. Am I in the position to go and get them?
Yeah.
Daniel comes back and says, yeah, you are. Go and get them. Then bingo.
Yeah.
But if he goes and says, we can't afford him, but he's an alternative.
Yeah.
It's still down to me to say yes or no.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm trying to say? So the buck stops with the gaffer or the head of recruitment. And those two supposed to be working together, the head of recruitment and the gaffer.
Do you think with the players they've got, though, a different manager could make them a lot better?
That's a good question. I think Andrew, I like the way he plays, but I think when he's had his whole back four injured for 3 months, I don't think he just made a decision not to adjust and stick to principles, and I think that was a wrong decision because they haven't won any games. Would they have won more games if they'd have gone a little bit more right and banked here? And I think they probably would have done. Then they would have come out of this where they are now, where all they're coming back, and then you could revert back to your type. So I think
self-inflicted injuries.
Yeah. You know, rushing players back, maybe they weren't ready. So yeah, I do. But I mean, I look at all of this and I think to myself, I try and simplify the game in my mind. If you give me 300 million, right, and said to any Premier League team, you can spend it. No one else. Everyone can have an opinion, but I'm going to make the decision on the players. I honestly think I'd do better. I don't know whether that's like me being like...
I'll tell you what though, mate, it don't get you a lot these days. It don't get you a lot these days, is it?
Yeah, it's true, but I still think... Do you know what I mean? I still think I could go and buy 10 players with 300 million, 30 million a player, and I think I could do... But I don't know whether I'm being like just ignorant or something.
Younger, I think right now you won't buy fully established players. You buy younger players, or you have to go abroad. You know, you'll have to go abroad, and then then the financial fair play. Because remember, you've got to deal with financial fair play. You've got to deal with all the players' wages.
I could come unstuck with the inland revenue.
That's the problem we've got, Holly. So there's this balance in that behind the scenes where sometimes you have to just take what you're given and try. Yeah. But that's the whole point of being a coach, a good coach at that. You've got to motivate your team. You've got to be improve him, and you've got to make him fit into your team. So there's loads of variables that go with it. Yeah. It's not just about going to buy the player and put him into them and it's part of the jigsaw and it works straight away.
You've got to be, if you're a coach or a manager, you've got to be able to get players to be able to do what you want them to do. It goes back to when I was at Brighton.
Yeah.
Mate, the players weren't great. Do you know what I mean? I was going down Championship, but Gus Poyet is a manager and a coach.
Yeah.
And talking people through the game.
Yeah.
The way he had them playing football, we played some really good football.
Yeah.
And the coaching of him was really, really good.
Yeah.
The setup,
Believed in it.
Telling the centre midfielder where he's going to go, the options he's got, how the other team plays, and his detail was really, really good.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking, there's some of these managers not go into enough detail with players if they need it.
Yeah, I don't know if it's maybe it's the detail problem. But I think going back to like what you said, I think you said about like, is the manager getting the players he wants? I remember a story, and I might be wrong. Alex Ferguson, when he's signing Cantona, he was might be wrong, so people might have to search this up, but he was on the phone to Leeds chairman. The director of football, Man United's chairman, was with Fergie, apparently, on the phone to Leeds about signing someone else. And Fergie just gone, ask him if Cantona's available. You know what I mean? And he's gone, well, he's not available. I can't remember what the player was. He said, what about Eric Cantona? And then all of a sudden, he might be available. And then, so like, that was just his instincts. You know what I mean? He wasn't even, like, mate, and that changed the face of football.
Yeah.
So I think, do you know what I mean? It changed for Manchester United. That was the catalyst for the success they had. That one last piece of the jigsaw. And I still think there's a room for that in the game where managers, or maybe it's just my romantic mind of how football should be.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what I mean.
Talking about romantic football, could this be a match made in heaven for Rashford? Ooh. Aston Villa, from Manchester United to Aston Villa. Amorim, obviously, he's got no striker. That's the way he's picturing it. So Rashford's left Manchester United to go to Aston Villa, who are a Champions League team, by the way.
Yeah.
So could this be a match made in heaven? Is this the move that Rashford needs to get to the next level of his career? Is this the new challenge he was talking about? Because for me, you don't leave Man United, but he might be a special case where he goes and gets some goals into his domain. He might be able to turn this around, his career around, and it might work for him.
Yeah, I thought the whole thing, that we don't know Marcus, but I thought the whole thing about him, we talked about Barcelona and Milan's and this world, was him needing to get out of Manchester because he's he's been the icon for that club.
Yep.
Manchester lad. Do you know what I mean? I was thinking, get away from there. So I'm thinking, he ain't gone that far. No. He's only, it's like, he can still be staying, staying at home. Yeah, he'll still be 100%. He'll be still be home. And I'm like, I don't know if it's like just I don't know if it's just that's his only option. Do you know what I mean? It's not a bad option, and Villa are a great club. They're going well. He has to make it. He has to make it work.
Yeah.
And he has to sit down, and have a look at himself in the mirror, and go, "This is me. This is not Manchester United's fault, or the owner, or the chairman, or the various managers I played with. I've got to do the right thing. I've got to live right. I've got to train right. I've got to be ready to give my performance to my teammates and my club." And listen, it's buzzing at the moment, Villa, so it's a good time to be there.
I kind of don't want to be too critical of him just because I don't really know.
No.
You've obviously got what the manager said about him.
Yeah.
But you like to think anyone at Villa is going to put his arm around him.
Yeah.
Give him a bit of confidence.
Coax him. Yeah.
Yeah.
And coach him. And he's got to listen.
Yeah, he's got to listen.
I'm not saying he isn't listening, but if someone's talking to him, like the manager, you know, like, I was hoping he was going to turn it round for Man United, to be honest. I was hoping the manager would be able to talk the sense into him that he thinks he needs, but you know, you don't know everything.
No.
But I'm hoping that, like you said, he can look in the mirror if something ain't right and put it right. If not, someone at Villa has really got to put their arm around him and get the best out of him.
Yeah.
I get you there, but it's a funny one with this Rashford scenario because I don't think anybody can talk about this with full confidence. The reason I say that, I don't think anyone is in Rashford's shoes.
Yeah.
Look, when you talk about Marcus Rashford and what he's done so far, footballing wise, he's achieved quite a lot. With Manchester United. I know it's and England as well.
Player for England.
We've got to respect him for that part. Right,
and then what he's done, I know,
still
got loads to give.
But then all of a sudden, as well, he went in to a different domain when he was getting involved with government business.
Yeah,
and everyone was saying, just focus on football. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I know you love the kids and that, and you're trying to help school meals.
Yeah,
we get it. But he even got criticised for doing that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Nah,
you get criticised for everything.
His PR, his PR right now, and his demeanour and who he is, his level of success in that field, and just being Man United, your stardom's unbelievable, right? Then he gets paid. But signs a new contract. He's on 375 grand a week.
Yeah.
Now, that's world class Mbappe level.
Yeah.
You understand where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
Wouldn't your head go a little bit with them type of figures when you're turning in 1.5 million a year a month?
Someone.
Yeah, absolutely.
So who can guide Rashford being on that type of dough?
Yeah.
And still being, when he got that, he was 25, 26.
Yeah.
Still having Man United, that badge on your back, because you are the flag bearer, you are the pin-up boy for this football club. We've made you the main man.
Yeah.
Was he even capable of flying that flag?
Yeah.
We don't know, because we don't know what goes on in his head.
Yeah.
It might be a load of pressure on him, and he's thinking, blimey, mate. And this is not even the best Man United team I'm playing in, and I've got to fly the flag as well, and I've got to be more or less the captain.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because I'm getting paid the most here. There's loads of other things that go into it. Then obviously the Jadon Sancho scenario coming, the Pogba. Remember, he was around the Pogba era, and he probably got called a bad boy from back then. So he was.
I'm gonna throw something.
It's so weird for him to be that man that everyone's expecting him to be, and maybe he's not actually ready to be that man that everyone's expecting. He just wanted to not be the captain, but be a part of the direction the club wanted to go in.
I'll throw something at you though, right? So you talk about the Sancho situation, Pogba situations, but a lot of players who sort of went to Man United and didn't quite. Pogba went back, obviously, and didn't, have been tarred with their, mindset. But when Cristiano come back, now one thing I know about Cristiano is he is like the consummate, almost bordering on
world-class,
psychopathic,
elite,
dedication to his craft. Won't even have a sugar. Goes to bed everything. Recovery.
He's addicted to it.
Addicted to football and scoring goals. Right. So he must have looked at some point. Marcus Rashford in his moment must have looked at some of the other players who weren't living right, and then looked at him and gone, like, where do I go? You know what I mean? I mean, I just think of myself as an impressionable young person, young football club. Someone like Cristiano Ronaldo would have come into the club and showed me the way. Do you know what I mean? I think I'd have been professional. Do you know what I mean?
When I was...
Instead I met Bridgie.
No, you led me astray, actually.
That's true.
That's my first night out in London. He dragged me out.
But you know what, right? I could understand it, because when I got to...
Do you know what I mean? That's what I mean. If someone at Villa can get him to think that way and coach him and get him, because he's got the ability to just...
Cristiano's shown him the path.
Yeah.
Is he capable of walking in? Listen, he'll never.
I hope he turns a corner.
I want him to be. I want him to be
close to it. We don't have to walk in the same steps. But you see the examples of, I can try that. Maybe that'll work for me. But you don't take everything off Cristiano. But he's the elite professional, so you'd think that's the way I've got to be. That's the way I've got to live my life. He comes in at 6 a.m. every morning. He's the ultimate professional. He's there before everybody else. I want to be like that guy. Yeah. It's up to the kids to take that risk. He doesn't have to tell you. You just have to look at him.
Yeah.
He's an example, a walking and breathing example of how to be.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to take that kind of leadership, then that's on you, isn't it? For me.
Yeah.
Are we going to go through? Are we going to go through the other three?
Ward-Prowse.
Back to West Ham.
I think that's good.
I think it's good.
I think it's strange they let him go, to be honest.
Yeah. Ain't that funny, Bridgie, when you get players like... He'd done well at West Ham.
Under England and everything.
Back in with England, in the England fold.
Banging free kicks.
Remember, we was banging his drum, wasn't it? Because we were thinking he was going to get back in that England side.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden a new manager comes in, don't like you, off you go to Nottingham Forest. He's not for Nuno, clearly.
Well, no, Nottingham Forest are flying.
Yeah.
There's no space for him.
He's been blocked like that. Fair enough.
Can't change it.
But it makes sense. And I think he's going to be a massive success. He's a West Ham player.
His Graham Potter's going to get the best out of him, I think. So I think it's a no-brainer.
He was playing so well there, I thought.
Yeah. What's he thought of down in Southampton? Like,
I loved
hero.
him, yeah. A lot of players loved him. You know, it's
fans love him.
Great as set piece. He worked hard, up and down. I think everyone's always liked him.
Yeah.
He's just not. He's probably not the.
He's not explosive, is he?
Just does well at everything.
But he's
good
not.
at everything, isn't he?
We go on data, Bridgie. He's like one of the highest runners, like kilometre-wise.
Yeah.
Every game in the West Ham team he was for, and I was so baffled why he was let go. And
mate, you get a free kick round the box, mate.
You want him on it, or a corner kick, because you got
corners.
You got Souček.
Some corners of him as well. Yeah,
you got Souček. That's a great header of the ball. You got a few boys that can head the ball.
Yeah,
like
I know Saints fans are gutted when he
Kilman.
Yeah.
So they're gonna. I think he's welcome back into the West Ham fold, especially now when you look at it. Nottingham Forest are flying. We get why you're not using him.
Yeah.
Come back home and let's get cracking again.
Let's get cracking. Enjoy yourself. Just looking at, we covered Mark Gay. Hammers, we've done that. I mean, last one, we're going to Tomori coming back. I mean, it's hard for us.
Palace rejects 70 million.
You know what? I'm surprised they've done that, Geese. I'm really surprised that they've rejected that type of money, because
for Mark Gay,
that's a lot of money for a centre half, Bridgie. 70 mil.
It's a lot of money, but I was saying to you earlier, to get players is hard. I think.
Yeah.
It ain't easy.
At this point, this point in the window though as well though. Remember that, like it is January, and you're going in quite late.
Yeah.
To get your prized asset is going to take a lot of money but that might be make or break my season.
They always say you're paying a lot more in January, don't they?
Yeah, so I'd say my season's probably worth 140 million. Do you know what I mean? So let's double it. Then you can have him.
Yeah.
You know, so when you're taking a player at this point of the season, teams can't come in with low prices. It's got to be double at least. You know.
Yeah,
it's
mad, isn't it? Do you ever move in January? In a late on a window. I've never done it late on a window.
Was I late? I went to City. I don't think it was late though.
No, it was like last minute.
No, it wasn't last.
Crouchy's interesting to talk about because he's had a few little. He was always linked, or because think about it, right? Most teams up and down the leagues, if you're a centre forward or a centre half, little number 10s never move. Because you're part of you're
system. You're in the system.
Like it'll be people sitting there going, we can't score goals. What centre forwards are available? He's available, and they try and get a deal done.
Or we can't defend.
We can't defend.
I need someone solid.
It's never like so.
Never a goalkeeper.
No,
or maybe sometimes it is actually.
Yeah, but
if there's a big injury,
there's always emergency loans open for that. So that's but it's always a strike. So the big man's he was a regular in January, up to the end of the window. Could go there.
Yeah.
But no, you never had the little.
I did. Yeah. West Brom.
Yeah.
I was supposed to go in January, then it got blocked. I was up there, done my whole medical.
Oh really?
Done my medical. I had the Liverpool one, and then I had the Arsenal one. I had January, and then
centre forwards.
And then the West Brom one came in. Tony Pulis, that was the one where I went up there, done my whole medical. I was on the desk like this, waiting for the phone call to say, "Yep, sign it off."
Yeah.
Me and Pulis was like this. He was over there, I was here, and then he got the phone call, and I was like that. And he goes like that. It's like Deal or No Deal. If you've ever seen Deal or No Deal, it was exactly like that. And I saw his face, and he's gone, "Sorry, Cole, it's bad news." I was like, "What do you mean?" Okay. I'm like, it's dark outside, and I think he goes, "You're gonna have to go home." Mate, I was like, Lord. Then I was like, "You hold on there." I got up, gone to the kitchen in West Brom training ground, by the way. The amount of lyrics that we was hearing in the canteen.
Really?
Right?
Was you fuming?
I was fuming. Sam Allardyce was on the phone.
Really?
I even spoke to the boss, David Sullivan.
Really?
What are you not doing to me? I don't understand. I said, "Do you know what, Gaffer? I'm never going to play for you again." How about that? Blah, 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 blah. Mate, I was playing the next week. I was playing the next week anyways. But it was just, it was a weird one. And I had to come back, and you got to go back because you thought it was going to happen. And then now you got to readjust because you've kind of detached yourself away from it. Then all of a sudden you got to come back into the fold. And you're you got to swallow your pride. Yeah. And you got to just go again and just be professional as possible. And fair play to me, I just saw the rest of the season out. And I had to sort myself at the end of the season, which was a little bit of a letdown because I thought I got a new contract.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? At the club, just because I didn't, but it didn't work out that way, and I had to try and sort myself out at the end. But yeah, it's a January window is a hard time for anybody to adjust.
Do you think they get it sorted though? Things that happen on the last day, you just think.
Everyone thinks it's professional and it's all done. This is phone calls being made now. There'll be chairman, they'll be buzzing off it. They're having a great time. Championship manager.
Desperate, Bridgie. Yeah. The reason why is just the time of desperateness. Yeah. It's not even a word. I just made it up. Yeah, no, people are desperate.
Desperation in the nation.
Desperation in the nation. You know what I mean? Like, people just want to get the deal done. Oh, I didn't. That fell through. Who else is next? Yeah. But you don't really want to be that player. Because you're coming in, you might just be a polyfiller for someone else until they get fit again and then you're all right. You know, so you got to make sure you cover yourself and make the right decision at this time of period.
Yeah, I think that's enough, boys, for today. Lovely to see you. You've been listening to The Dressing Room with Al Arabiya News. Thanks for listening.
From the White House to Gaza, Kyiv to Beijing, elections, economics and the environment compete with conflicts and other complex issues for our attention. In an age of fake news, deepfake and artificial intelligence, they've got to have a vote and a say. It's important to look beyond the loudest voice to understand the truth. From newsmakers to groundbreakers,
my campaign is going very well.
Presidents, prime ministers, princes and peacemakers, and cultural tastemakers.
As Arabs, as Middle Eastern, we're too emotional.
Join me on The Riz Khan Show for empowering conversation.
Hello and welcome to Global News Today, bringing you exclusive interviews with leading experts every weekday here on Al Arabiya News. I'm Tom Burges Watson. Coming up on today's programme, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is in Washington as the first foreign leader to visit President Trump since his return to the White House. A key topic of discussion, the ceasefire in Gaza, which President Trump says he's unsure will actually hold. US-funded humanitarian programs across the globe face an uncertain future as President Donald Trump orders an overhaul of almost all foreign aid. Elon Musk has been tasked with slashing spending by the US Agency for International Development. And sighs of relief in Canada and Mexico as President Trump holds off on the 25% tariffs he'd threatened would take effect today. This after both countries agreed to crack down on immigration and drug smuggling. Hello and welcome to the programme. President Donald Trump has ordered an overhaul of almost all US foreign aid, and he has tasked Elon Musk with reviewing and cutting expenditure by the US Agency for International Development. But the freezing of US aid funds is expected to have a devastating impact for many thousands of people across the world. Well, President Trump has signed an executive order pausing almost all international spending for 90 days. Well, the US spent around $68 billion on international aid in 2023. Most of that money was directed towards projects in Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa and Europe. Well, US aid has also provided more than $2 billion in aid to Gaza since the 7th of October 2023. Well, the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio says that future US aid projects must be aligned with American foreign policy.
So the functions of USAID, there are a lot of functions of USAID that are going to continue, that are going to be part of American foreign policy, but it has to be aligned with American foreign policy. And this is not my frustration. This frustration has existed now for almost a quarter century, and multiple administrations that have gone through this challenge. It's going to stop and it's going to end. There are things that it does that are good, and there are things that it does that we have strong questions about. It's about the way it operates as an entity. And they're supposed to take direction from the State Department, policy direction. They do not. Not only do they not take policy direction, they're completely uncooperative.
The US Secretary of State speaking there. Meanwhile, Democratic lawmakers are expressing alarm.
This is not some minor transgression. This is an illegal act. They stormed into buildings. They shut down agencies illegally. And sure, first it was USAID. But they are now systematically going into the Small Business Administration, the Department of the Treasury, and they will not stop until they believe they have total control over spending.
Okay, well, let's cross now to London. We can speak to Greg Swenson, Chair of Republicans Overseas UK. Thank you very much indeed for joining us once again here on Al Arabiya News. What's your understanding of what the future holds for US aid?
Yeah, I think it will be a much improved USAID. I think that, these changes are needed, as the prior comments suggested. I think they're needed all across Washington and the bureaucracy. So this was just one of the first of many of these bureaucratic departments that really needs to be cleaned up. But I think that the core purpose of USAID will continue, and it'll be a better agency for it.
So why do you think there needs to be such a significant review of US foreign aid?
Yeah, I think there's a few reasons, Tom. First of all, that there's no real clear understanding of who's making decisions and where this money goes. So much of it is untraceable. And as Marco Rubio pointed out, they have not been cooperative for a long time, for at least 2 decades. So I think that's important that there's got to be accounting, because there's just so much waste. The second point is, as the Secretary of State pointed out, we have to make sure that these are aligned with the national interest. The statute says it must be aligned with policy directives from the State Department, from the National Security Council, and from the President. And it does not appear that many of those, or at least, in certain administrations, were not consistent with policy. And I'll just give you an example of some of the waste. And I think this is the third point, that people are just appalled with government waste. That's one of the reasons President Trump was elected. But, $32,000 for a trans comic book in Peru, $2.6 million for a DEI training in Serbia. Those are the kind of things that really are disappointing to hear from the voters. And that's, again, why President Trump has a real, kind of a tailwind to do this kind of stuff.
Okay, but obviously some really worthwhile organizations are really going to suffer, aren't they? And it could mean that, for example, the lives of women who are pregnant in Afghanistan, people who are dependent on HIV treatments in South Africa, they're going to pay a heavy price, aren't they?
I don't think so, because I think the Secretary was very clear, and this goes back, 2 weeks when these directives first started coming out, about cutting off all spending. They did that for a very deliberate reason, because there was just so much unaccountable money going out the door, and they wanted to stop that. But he said immediately, any important function that's going to save lives there'll be waivers, and that can be done very quickly. And I'm sure it's been done already since day one. So the intention here is not to cut off aid that saves lives, aid that is supporting people in distress, the so-called safety net. This is to stop the things like I mentioned, $70,000 for Irish DEI musical and a $47,000 for a trans opera in Colombia. This stuff just makes no sense, and again has nothing to do with the policy of the United States. Whereas saving people in countries that are in a difficult situation, that is part of the foreign policy of the United States. That is good to have that kind of presence in that part of the world.
Elon Musk described USAID as a, quote, criminal organization. Don't you think that's going a bit far?
Yeah, I think so. I think, Elon Musk is kind of a, provocative. He's a disruptor, obviously. And so, he's going to have a different way about him. I thought the way the Secretary of State explained it was much more filtered and much more intelligent in many ways. But, again, voters voted for the bull in the China shop. They want President Trump to be aggressive. They want him to be disruptive. And Elon Musk is very similar to President Trump in that way. So unfortunately, they've tried the polite way for 2 or 3 decades, and it just hasn't worked. So now they're going in a lot more aggressively. Sometimes it's distasteful, sometimes it's unfiltered, but in many cases that's refreshing, given the frustration of the voters and $36 trillion in debt, $8 trillion of which came in the last 4 years.
There are a lot of people who are worried about, you know, what sort of a message this sends out to the world about what kind of a partner, what kind of an ally the United States is. Iran has been joking in state media, saying that the United States is treating its allies like, quote, disposable tissues, they said. I mean, this does raise some issues, doesn't it, about the trust and reliability of the US as a partner?
Yeah. Well, of course, and I think, of course, that would come from Iran, and it probably is coming from North Korea and Russia as well. But I think, you know, we have to keep in mind that the system is broken, and it's better for the world if the U.S. is in a powerful position and fiscally healthy, so we can continue being the most generous country in the world and continue defending the West and basically defending the world from adversaries. And so, you know, we can't do that. The United States can't do that if we're in a fiscal crisis, which we are in right now. So this in many ways just fixes a broken system, makes it better so that we can provide not only aid, but we can provide defense and security and free and safe shipping lanes for the next generation.
So people out there who say, you know, aid is a key part of building alliances around the world, and in the absence of that US aid, the void will be filled by China and Russia in developing countries in particular. What would you say to them?
Well, I mean, look, I think it's okay for people to be worried because this system is not sustainable the way it is. So I understand that. But I think what they have to keep in mind is yes, there could be gaps filled by adversaries, but those gaps will not be terribly open. In other words, the critical aid will continue. I think it's important. But in many ways, aid in the long run is a failure. All you're doing is putting a Band-Aid on the problem. What's really worked better is sustainable development. And that's why President Trump doubled the balance sheet of the U.S. Development Financial Corp in his first term. And he saw that the Chinese the Belt and Road was being quite competitive and quite aggressive in sub-Saharan Africa, in parts of Asia. And so, U.S. development is not just aid and charity. It should be something that's sustainable. And that's why they go in, building infrastructure, building out agriculture, food processing, energy, of course, most important. 500 million people in Africa still don't have electricity. And so the United States has been really aggressive about that, especially in Trump's first term, in bringing power and electricity and clean water to sub-Saharan Africa and other difficult places. That's going to continue. And I think it's just better, again, to fix the broken system, make sure that aid is not just going to frivolous projects like the ones I listed, or aid's going into the pockets of generals, or the food is being distributed, by gangs in places like Gaza. So much of that food didn't reach its intended recipients. So I think there's many occasions and many places where we can fix the system. And that's what we're really trying to do. This is not cutting off aid to the world. It's making it more efficient.
Sure. So those people who are saying, this is a great gift to countries like Belarus and Iran, Nicaragua, North Korea, where, for example, USAID money is being used to finance pro-democracy programs, you'd say, look, this is uncomfortable. It's an audit. No one likes an audit, but everything will be better in a couple of months from now. Is that roughly how you'd sort of sum it all up?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, Tom. And I think if you take some of that money that's being wasted, either put it back in the taxpayer's pocket or put it toward things that are constructive, like looking after pregnant women in Afghanistan, for sure. Those things will work. And again, some of the things you mentioned, like democracy support in countries like Nicaragua, those are things that are very well aligned with U.S. foreign policy and the national interest. So, I think those kind of programs will continue. But I think you've probably seen the last of, trans comic books in Peru. I think those days are pretty numbered.
USAID is going to be overhauled by someone by the name of Peter Morocco, who perhaps not all our international viewers will be aware of. He's a former US Marine, a conservative activist from Dallas. He described USAID, by the way, as being run by radical left lunatics. I'm just wondering what his qualification is for that job.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't know him personally. I think anybody who's had military experience, the military's been one of the great institutions at delivering aid to people and looking after people in distress. And you saw that in Iraq and Afghanistan, in spite of the problems in both of those countries. But the humanitarian effort by the U.S. military was incredible. So, yeah, I think having veterans in those positions can be really productive. I think, saying that they're run by lunatics, okay, maybe that's a little aggressive, but, in my experience with aid, there's a lot of good people. We do a lot of work with USAID, my firm in Africa, and there are a lot of good people, but there's a lot of people that are just going to conferences, congratulating each other and kind of spreading this woke ideology around the world. And that is clearly not aligned with the national interest.
And just lastly, I mean, this is just one case study of the Trump administration doing something that looks and sounds quite painful and is obviously upsetting a lot of people, not least the people whose jobs are affected in Washington and indeed much further afield as well. Is there an argument, perhaps the Trump administration, it's 2 weeks old as an administration, is being a little bit heavy-handed here, and there might be a better way of doing things? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, we've tried the more subtle way for generations now, and it just hasn't worked. And then while we're doing that, the government bureaucracy gets more bloated, so the regulatory state just gets larger, which makes it more difficult for people and businesses to function. And so I think we got to the point, and this is, again, one of the reasons that President Trump won the elections comfortably, is that people are just fed up with it. And so the voters have sent a signal that these bloated bureaucracies have to be fixed. Bringing a private sector mentality to Washington will be really productive. It will make Washington better. And then these aid programs like USAID and development programs like USDFC will be much improved. And that will be better for the world and better for our allies. And so, that's important to keep in mind. A private sector mentality, yes, people lose their jobs. That's too bad. It happens to the best of us in the private sector. It's just real life. But I think if that mentality works in Washington, you'll see a really successful improvement in the bureaucracy there.
Okay, well, we really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us as ever. Greg Swenson, Chair of Republicans Overseas at UK. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Tom.
Well, let's get more now. We can speak to Matthew Kavanagh, Director for the Centre for Global Health Policy and Politics at Georgetown University, who joins us now from Washington. Thank you very much indeed for being with us. What's your understanding of what the future holds for USAID? On the one hand, we're being told it's going to be shut down altogether. On the other hand, we're being told that it's going to go through some pretty radical reforms, but continue to exist in a different form. What's your understanding?
So I don't think we're exactly sure. There's a lot of chaos right now around kind of what is the future of the agency. It's important to remember that USAID was chartered by Congress. It's an established organization, an agency within the U.S. government, and it actually does not, the president doesn't have the ability and the legal authority to just abolish it. And so what you heard yesterday was Secretary Rubio saying that he is now the head of USAID, and that their plan is to bring it inside of the U.S. government, or of the U.S. State Department, and perhaps abolish parts of it, perhaps keep other parts of it. It's really deeply unclear, and it's actually set up a major constitutional challenge for the Congress and the presidency at this point.
We've just been speaking to a guest who said that the USAID is extremely wasteful. He says millions of Americans take issue with some of the projects that are being funded by it, and he says it's time that it became a private sector style entity and a little bit more accountable. What do you say to that?
I think that's a ridiculous critique. The core of USAID is funding to some of the most important issues around the world, to some of the most disadvantaged communities around the world. There are, of course, ways that USAID could be shifted or made better, but the vast majority of USAID funding goes to things like fighting pandemics, stopping disease, feeding hungry people. These aren't corrupt, these aren't problematic, these aren't wasteful. These are interventions in the world from the richest country in the world. totaling less than 1% of the total budget that actually go to both support a variety of U.S. priorities, but also to do a lot of humanitarian good. This is exactly what the private sector is unable to do. This is about providing public goods in a world of chaos, in a world of inequality. And so those kinds of critiques just make no sense. They carry no water.
I mean, this administration in Washington is just 2 weeks old, and we're trying to sort of feel our way slightly in the dark as to just to what extent they're going to come good on promises and threats. But there does seem to be an element of create a lot of drama around an issue, a lot of discussion and debates with some method, I should say, in that technique, and in the end result isn't quite as dramatic as everyone fears it might be. I mean, do you think that might ultimately end up being the case with USAID, that's just going to be in for a major review, but it's not ultimately going to be shut down?
We'll see. I mean, I think it's a valid question of kind of what of this is just bluster and blunder. A lot of the information that's being shared is simply false. Recently the White House secretary for the press was telling everyone that there was $50 million in condoms going to Gaza, and that was an excuse for why they really had to review everything. Well, there was no $50 million worth of condoms going to Gaza. That was just fiction. So a lot of what is circulating is made up, facts with a tiny bit of truth that are not actually what they appear, and a lot of things that are just disingenuous. So the core question is, why is this administration attacking aid programs this way? What we know is that right now, the freeze that's been put on aid programs is having hugely disastrous impact. People aren't getting HIV treatment. People aren't getting HIV prevention. There are lives being lost right now because the administration has paused all aid. This isn't like a business. You can't run it like a business. This is life-saving work. And so stopping it right now is having deeply damaging effects. But what we also know is that part of what this administration is trying to do is to sow some level of chaos, because that's a way to gain power. And so right now they've put all of the kind of leadership of USAID on leave. They've decided that it's going to move over to the US State Department. They've set up a whole bunch of major challenges. What if that will come to fruition is an interesting question. Actually, the courts are now weighing in. They've actually put a temporary restraining order on the freeze on funding. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if the courts actually stop the transfer of USAID into the State Department, because it very directly violates US law. And so the question is, what level of this is real? And what level of this is an attempt to sow chaos and to kind of, create power building? And then a third option is also out there, which is what portion of this is the administration trying things out in the aid sector, because they know that the aid sector is less politically powerful than others, where they try to really attack the civil servants, really attack the U.S. government structures that move things forward. And if they can do it in USAID, maybe they can also do it in other parts of the U.S. government. That's the one that actually worries me the most.
Yeah, I mean, all of this must feel very real to, as you use as an example there, those people getting HIV prevention services and treatments. For example, in South Africa, there was the manager of one clinic that provides life-saving treatment to 6,000 people, who's quoted as saying, "The US is a totally unreliable partner. The system is entirely volatile and chaotic." I mean, the other thing is that by reversing progress on something like HIV/AIDS, which had been a global pandemic at one stage, actually could boomerang back and affect the United States, couldn't it?
That's right. And there are right now 122 different emergency health events that are going on around the world. There's an outbreak of Marburg virus in Tanzania. There's Ebola virus that's just broken out since the president was inaugurated in the Democratic Republic of Congo and in Uganda. In Bolivia, we've got a new hemorrhagic fever. There's a wide variety of things that are going on. And we've got the continuing AIDS pandemic that's having 3,000 people every day infected. Interrupting these programs, deciding that the U.S. is going to halt them, doesn't just hurt millions and millions of people around the world, but it also makes the U.S. less safe. The broad consensus around global health is that there has to be a kind of collective effort to stop the pandemics of today, to halt the pandemics of the future. All of that is work that takes money, but it actually takes a tiny bit of money for the world's richest countries. And so playing around with this is playing around with fire. You know, the administration, the last Trump round of this, got the COVID-19 response incredibly bad, incredibly wrong. They were unable to stop the virus, and they used a whole bunch of policy tools that were deeply inappropriate. And so now they're coming after the agencies that actually showed just how inappropriate their COVID response was, out of, I think, a sense of vendetta to some degree. But it's incredibly short-sighted, because it means that as these next pandemics happen, they will grow and grow, and that's going to affect not just people around the world outside the United States, but people inside the United States who are looking at bird flu, who are looking at an outbreak of tuberculosis. The world is interconnected, and this administration can try to pretend it's not, but they won't succeed.
Sure, and you mentioned there in what ways this poses a threat to the United States from the point of view of diseases, pandemics, and such like. There's also an argument that's being put out there, and I'd like you to help us understand this, that by defunding or dismantling USAID, it somehow undermines US security goals. What's the argument? What's the thinking there?
So the broad understanding in the foreign policy community is that there are multiple ways to achieve, diplomatic goals. Some are through hard power, some are through direct negotiation and diplomacy. But a lot can be achieved through soft power. And that is the essence of what USAID does, for better or for worse. I think there are some very strong critiques, actually, of the ways that the U.S. has used USAID in ways that I think are neocolonial and really are problematic in terms of the way it works. But there's also absolute truth to the reality that funding HIV treatment and keeping people alive around the world has brought massive goodwill to the United States. That actually ensuring that the U.S. is one of the responders to disasters when they happen, to crises like cyclones and earthquakes, that is a basic responsibility of a major power in the world. And so that brings the U.S. a wide variety of positive energy, positive political shine, and it advances the idea that a more stable world is one in which the United States benefits dramatically. And so all of that is the mission of USAID. So as we have the Elon Musks of the world going out, not understanding how the world diplomacy works, not kind of seeing the bigger picture, and instead picking out little bits and then lying about them. It's deeply problematic, right? The White House just posted a list of terrible things that they found, and most of them are not particularly terrible, right? Ensuring that there is greater understanding in the Balkans is probably a good idea for a post-genocidal society. So the kinds of things that this administration is pointing out and how small and kind of ridiculous they are actually just show how little critique there actually is for the U.S. Agency for International Development. My hope is that will be reversed. We've got folks in the Senate and in the U.S. Congress who really do understand the ways in which USAID serves U.S. interests. And my guess is that they are going to have some serious checks on whether or not the president can do the most radical things. But that's going to be up to this Congress, which, of course, is now united behind the Republican Party. And that means that the opposition to it is much weaker than it might otherwise be. But even among Republicans, there's a sense that this is a bad foreign policy decision.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for your time today, Matthew Kavanagh. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Now, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has arrived in Washington, making him the first foreign leader to visit President Donald Trump since he returned to the White House. Well, this visit comes as negotiations begin for the second phase of the ceasefire deal in Gaza. Well, President Trump had previously expressed that he had no assurances that the ceasefire would actually hold, unlike his Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff, who sounded more optimistic. Witkoff says that he is hopeful that President Trump will secure the release of more hostages and, in his words, save lives. Well, at the negotiating table, Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu won't just be discussing the ceasefire. They're also expected to be discussing the future of Gaza and its people. Well, for more analysis, we can speak now to Thomas Pickering, former US ambassador to Israel, who joins us from Virginia in the United States. Thank you so much for joining us once again, Ambassador Pickering. There were some pretty tense relations at various stages between the Israeli Prime Minister and the Biden White House. Does this visit to the Trump White House symbolize to you a reset for Israeli-American relations?
I think that we will wait to see the results of the meeting this afternoon to make that determination. But it indicates an interest in President Trump's finding a way to bring along Prime Minister Netanyahu with his effort to end the conflict and his effort to bring home hostages, both of which he has continued to make a central focus of what he wishes to do. Linked with this are deep concerns about nuclearization in Iran and constant reports of the Iranians making progress toward developing a nuclear weapon on the one hand, and on the other hand, a deep concern by President Trump about the possibility, indeed, of setting up a closer link between Saudi Arabia and perhaps other Gulf countries and Israel as part of an effort to find a way to end conflict. And some of the difficulties that are engaged in that, one being basically, will he put Mr. Netanyahu in a position where he adopts policies which will make him vulnerable in the Israeli political and security scene to retribution and examination and investigation as a result of Hamas's military attack on Israel and the devastation on October 7th, which it caused? Will it also open the door to deep American concerns about the death rate among Palestinians in Gaza? Over 46,000 reported so far.
Indeed, and you raise a lot of important points there, Ambassador. But just sort of going back to the basics surrounding this state visit, I mean, the first foreign leader to be hosted by President Donald Trump since his inauguration, I mean, that sends out quite a strong message to the rest of the world, doesn't it?
It sends out a signal, obviously, that President Trump is seriously interested in Middle East, hopefully, as he says, in Middle East peace and the end of conflict, and dealing with the myriad linked questions that I've just gone over with you, which are important because the sense is that there's no silver bullet yet in sight, although we will see in the meeting whether President Trump's mastery of the art of the deal is beginning to have an effect on Prime Minister Netanyahu, up to including the question of how and in what way he will be prepared to make necessary sacrifices to bring about the compromises that President Trump has clearly put as the necessity on the table, particularly to end the conflict and return hostages.
Do you think it's correct to describe the Trump administration as being staunchly pro-Israeli, or would you say that was a mischaracterization?
I think that you can say that they're deeply committed to Israel, but they also have other questions in mind, one of which philosophically is current Israeli policy with respect to the continued conflict in Gaza, bringing Israel into a situation of quite serious disrepute among wide numbers of members of the international community on which it has previously depended for support, not just the United States.
In terms of what happens next with regards to the ceasefire process, we understand that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is going to be sending a delegation to Doha this week as the negotiations there continue. Just where are we in this process of negotiating a ceasefire with Hamas? And
I think we're at the beginning of the beginning, if I can phrase it that way, and that we know, in fact, that getting to the first agreement was extremely hard, and part of that was how to outline or set the agenda for the second agreement. That's now having to be addressed, and bringing the Israeli delegation to Qatar, which happened over the weekend and was the work apparently of President Trump's negotiator, is a positive forward step, but not the full answer, obviously, to the question of how and in what way can the big issues that lie in wait for that particular process be resolved. The resolution of the president is clear. He's made it clear, and that will have some serious standing with the Israelis, and will be one of the questions that he will look to as being perhaps facilitated by the invitation and the arrival of Prime Minister Netanyahu here as the first of his state guests.
Yeah, and of course, we heard President Donald Trump, even before he became president, taking quite a lot of credit for that ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. Do you think that adds a sense of obligation to the visiting Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to perhaps respect that ceasefire and make sure that it goes down in history as having been a success?
If you believe, as some do, and which I'm inclined toward, that Prime Minister Netanyahu wishes to remain in office and in charge and the master of Israeli policy about going ahead as an important condition of his avoiding what is clearly something of concern to many people, that he be investigated and looked at in terms of any responsibility he might have for the events of October 7th, or the failure of Israel to anticipate and deal with those events. And that remains very much out there as something that people will want to pay attention to as Prime Minister Netanyahu pays attention to it.
Just with regards to some of the things we've heard from the Trump administration, which is only 2 weeks old as an administration, but one of the things we've heard President Trump saying is he wants to clean out Gaza and have people who live there relocated to Egypt or Jordan. Obviously, those two countries have firmly rejected that, as has the Arab League. Do you think, just trying to sort of decipher the language and the rhetoric of the Trump administration, do you think he was serious, or do you think he was testing the waters when he touted that plan?
President Trump is, in many ways, a man who finds ways to profit from uncertainty and surprise. That doesn't mean he's not serious. This particular remark had a certain transactional reminiscence of how and in what way real estate people describe what it is they're interested in, a glorification, if you could put it this way, of the weather, the beaches, and the coastline of Gaza. One was brought to mind, whether this is really sound and true or not, that he has some kind of hotel development interest in the process from what he has had to say. Certainly, one has to consider that as being perhaps part of the picture that he envisages with respect to Gaza as he goes ahead. But we'll have to wait and see as that develops, because his capacity to surprise and his capacity to create astonishment with uncertain and rather astounding kinds of statements is all part of his general tactic of finding ways to keep the public, if I could put it this way, engaged but unable further to question him with the wide variety of issues he regularly brings to mind through his management of communications and the press, something that he has shown himself capable of excelling in.
Indeed, we'll have to find out whether or not he was serious. Perhaps we'll find out more as the talks go on between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu. who, by the way, claims to have redrawn the map here in the Middle East. This, he says, he's done by confronting Iran and its proxies around the region. Would you agree with him? Has he redrawn the map?
No, but I think he's changed political military conditions in a number of ways with his efforts first to try to destroy Hamas. That has not been, according to many military observers, achieved, and it may not be possible. And also the use of force in southern Lebanon against Hezbollah, which has seemingly had some significant effect. Whether it has been the termination of all of their influence and the termination of Iranian influence in a political military sense through people that are often called their proxies, although they don't seem to like that appellation. This may well be part of what we're dealing with now, and it is part of what I believe we are seeing unfold here, but in ways that are, put it this way, not very easy to predict, as the uncertainties of the Middle East are coupled with the processes that are undertaken and the number of challenges that we all face in finding a way to resolve the questions that are out there. Iranian nuclearization, Saudi Arabia reluctance to jump into the arms of Israel in the region, and the concerns that Prime Minister Netanyahu obviously has about termination of the conflict and his right-wing opposition's concerns about that on his part, and the vulnerability he might face for an investigation and recognition of responsibilities with respect to the events of October 7th and the other tragedies that have been caused by force, the use of violence, and so on. One of the key reasons why I think President Trump has adopted a view that war isn't going to solve this problem and it must be ended.
Just lastly, Ambassador, I wanted to ask you for your take on the U.S. Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff, who's emerged as a pretty important figure in the discussions that are taking place in Washington right now, and he's worked closely on the ceasefire deal as well. Tell us a bit about him and what you think he brings to the table with regards to trying to resolve this decades-old problem between Israel and the Palestinians.
I think, Tom, that is a very, very important question. And I did not have the pleasure of knowing Mr. Witkoff at all, but have watched very carefully and felt that he's very wisely dealt with the problem in ways that first are based on promoting compromise and cooperation. The latest step being the one I just noted of the Israelis agreeing to send a delegation to Qatar in the very near future to deal with the second phase discussions that will have to take place if, in fact, this conflict is going to be ended, but also his development of a relationship with the player in the region that is very important with Prime Minister Netanyahu and so on. And we'll have to see how and in what way this negotiating skill and his obvious, I think, capacity to adapt and adopt to the realities of the region, and at the same time to find ways to make forward progress, if only step by step, which may not be an unwise counsel under the current circumstances, mean that he has a contribution to make. And we've already seen that, and should be watched very, very carefully. And I have to tell you that I have found, as someone with a little bit of experience in the region over a number of years, that he seems to be doing quite well, and one hopes that that continues.
Okay, former U.S. Ambassador to Israel, Thomas Pickering, thank you very much indeed for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you. In other news, President Donald Trump has pressed the pause button on the tariffs that he'd threatened to impose on Mexico and Canada. Well, instead of being implemented today, President Trump will review the situation, he says, in 30 days from now. All of this comes after the leader of both countries agreed to toughen up border controls. The Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, says he'll crack down on drug smuggling across the northern border, and he's appointing a special czar to oversee this. Meanwhile, on the southern border, Mexico is immediately reinforcing its border with the United States by deploying 10,000 National Guard troops. Well, let's get more now. We can speak to John Sandweg, former acting director for ICE under President Barack Obama. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, John. I mean, some sighs of relief in Ottawa and Mexico City. Those 25% tariffs that were supposed to take effect today have been paused for 30 days. What have they done to achieve this?
Well, I think what the president did was by using the threat of economic sanctions and the usage of tariffs to force these concessions as it relates to border security. I think what's interesting, Tom, very quickly, is this again is another example of the Trump administration elevating border security and immigration to the highest priorities of the United States. But more specifically, Mexico promised to deploy National Guardsmen to the northern border there to try to, crack down on the flow of drugs into the United States. And Canada made similar concessions as it relates to border security. So interesting in the sense that the administration's demands to stop the tariffs were focused pretty much exclusively on issues related to border security and immigration.
Okay, and when you hear those steps that are going to be taken by Canada and Mexico, do they sound to you like meaningful steps?
Well, I mean, I think the symbolic value is certainly more significant. 10,000 National Guardsmen at the northern border with Mexico will make an impact. But, Tom, you have to understand that Mexico actually is a surprisingly good partner to the United States when it comes to border security. Over the last year, they've done a lot at their southern border to stop the flow of migrants from Central America who are flowing north to the United States. And at the border itself, Mexican law enforcement has always been an incredible partner with U.S. law enforcement in terms of combating the drug cartels and doing cross-border investigations. Now, corruption is a systematic problem in Mexico. So it's a challenge that we face in terms of when we're working law enforcement operations. And there are certain sections of Mexico where the Mexican government really doesn't have operational control of their own region because of the strength of the cartels. But look, 10,000 troops will make a difference. I'm not going to tell you, though, that they've solved the border crisis in the United States by doing that. And the symbolic value, and I think the political, the president's going to claim a political victory here, are probably more impactful than the actual guard, the National Guardsmen will be deployed themselves.
Sure, because of course President Donald Trump has something to show for those words. So as well as those 10,000 frontline officers who are going to help secure the northern border with Canada, Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister, says they'll list drug cartels as terrorists. He's going to appoint a fentanyl czar and crack down on money laundering. I mean, some people might say, weren't those measures long overdue?
Well, I think that one of the mistakes people might make in all of this is to suggest or believe that Canada has not done a lot and is not an incredible partner of the United States. The truth is, the United States has no greater partner when it comes to law enforcement and cross-border investigations in Canada. I think what's interesting, Tom, too, and I think what befuddled a lot of people in the United States is the annual number of seizures of fentanyl, on the U.S. border from Canada are actually exceedingly low. I think a lot of the fentanyl that is illegally imported into Canada stays in Canada. So when you look and compare the volume of seizures of fentanyl between Mexico and Canada, I mean, there's about 100 times, if not more, seizures coming north from Mexico into the United States and from Canada. So I do think people were kind of curious about why the president was kind of putting this kind of robust approach to Canada when the number of seizures are so low and Canada is such an incredible partner. But nevertheless, here we are.
Yeah, it sounds like you, therefore, wouldn't agree with Kevin Hassett, who is the National Economic Council Director, who said this isn't a trade war, it's a drug war. He was referring to both Canada and Mexico. Sounds like you don't think he's necessarily in agreement with you.
Well, no, I agree that I think the primary purpose here of the president was to force concessions as it relates to border security. I think, look, as it relates to Canada, though, I think there are some misnomers out there about what happens between the U.S.-Canadian border. The reality is that the flow of migrants is very low at that border. The reality also is that the flow of drugs is very low at the border. Certainly, there's cross-border crime, and that's always going to be at any border. But in terms of whatever kind of reasonable definition you have of border security, I think it's fair to say that the U.S.-Canadian border, as vast as it is, Tom, I mean, it's a very large border with, large areas of unincorporated kind of, sections that could be vulnerable to smuggling. But the reality is that there's very little illegal activity, cross-border activity up at that border, certainly as compared to Mexico. But what I do think, again, is interesting, however, is the sheer elevation of border security. We've never seen a political administration in the United States, a president, elevate border security to the absolute pinnacle of U.S. national security priorities. It's always been a third or fourth, an important priority, but not anywhere near where you see a president willing to pull out all the tools available to him economically in order to force what are arguably relatively mild concessions from our trading partners.
Yeah, one of them being, as we've been saying, a fentanyl czar. What would you expect a fentanyl czar to actually have to do?
Anytime you're combating the illegal flow of narcotics, there are really two different kind of functions that you need to do. One is interdiction, and that is your frontline officers who are trying to stop the flow, whether they're inspecting vehicles or monitoring illegal cross-border traffic, so people who are crossing in between the ports of entry. There are a variety of tools there, and in the United States, that is our U.S. Border Patrol, right? They're an interdiction force. They're there to stop smugglers, catch them as they're trying to enter the United States. But really, you can't get this work done effectively unless you also have a robust investigations process. And so I imagine what the fentanyl czar in Canada is going to do is really try to coordinate all of the law enforcement investigatory resources and the prosecutorial resources to try to dismantle the smuggling organizations. And I think critical to that, Tom, is the flow of money, right? All these drug cartels are doing this for profits, that they generate tremendous cash profits. It becomes an incredible challenge for them to launder that money back, clean it and get it back into the economic system. So look, with luck, hopefully here, the U.S., what this will happen was the Canadian, fentanyl czar will now start coordinating even more with the United States law enforcement authorities that kind of have a cohesive, targeted approach to dismantle the cartels. I mean, history has shown us interdiction efforts, 10,000 guardsmen just to stop the frontline smugglers is insufficient. You got to destroy the networks themselves.
Okay, and just in terms of the give and the take in all of this, it wasn't an entirely one-way street because the United States has committed to Mexico. It will try to limit the flow of guns out of the US into Mexico. But in terms of any other gives from the United States, were there any other concessions made the other way?
I think, look, that is the primary one, but Tom, that is an important one. Historically, most of the U.S.'s focus has been on illegal traffic going north into the United States. And people might be surprised. We typically and historically have done very little enforcement on southbound traffic. So people going into Mexico rarely encounter U.S. officials who screen them or document their departure or search for the illicit flow of guns. Typically, Tom, what happens here are guns go south and cash goes south. Drugs and people go north. So, I think Mexico, this has long been a frustration for them. Most of the guns that the cartels, a lot of the guns that cartels utilize and a lot of the guns in Mexico are illicitly trafficked from the United States. The challenge for the U.S., of course, has been, though, with the kind of the chaos we saw at the border over the last 8 years. We just had huge numbers of people crossing. It really pulls the resources from the Department of Homeland Security, the agency that would be in charge of outbound enforcement, from deploying those troops that we needed to put those Border Patrol agents working in the interior and those CBP officers, handling the influx of people coming across the border. So I think that was a significant concession to the extent that the U.S. steps up on that, and one that, frankly, really will help kind of dismantle those cartels, as I was saying, in terms of depriving them of some of the cash that they're trying to repatriate and depriving them of the firearms that they smuggle from the United States.
Yeah, and seen from a Mexico point of view, these drug cartels inflict considerable suffering on the people of Mexico themselves, rendering entire towns, entire regions, sort of no-go areas for law enforcement and meaning people live in grave danger. Mexico could argue that if the United States did more to tackle the demand side of things, then there'd be no issue on the supply side. is the United States doing enough?
I'll tell you, Tom, look, it's obviously an incredibly difficult problem to tackle, but ultimately that is the reason why there's a drug market. That's why the cartels exist, is the U.S. demand for illicit narcotics. And I think that any solution to looking at this problem, you can't just enforce your way out of these problems. You have to tackle this also as a public health crisis. You have to look at tools that can effectively deter people from using narcotics or help them break the cycle of addiction when they're addicted. So, unfortunately, I think one thing we in the United States don't always do well is look at these things in a holistic manner and say, look, we need to attack demand as well as we need to do the investigatory functions to dismantle these cartels and the interdiction function to try to make it harder for them to get drugs here in the first place. But ultimately, of course, the ultimate reason why these cartels are so powerful and why they have so much money is what has proven to be really an insatiable demand for narcotics in the United States and around the world.
As we were saying earlier on, President Trump, of course, will be portraying these steps taken by Canada and Mexico as having been a victory for him. Those two countries are portraying the pause, or the stay of execution, as being a win for them. Clearly, during the next 30 days, there's going to be intense dialogue. Basically, this is just the beginning, isn't it? This sets the scene for some pretty intense negotiations over the next 4 weeks or so.
Yeah, look, I think that this is the beginning of what we're going to see is repeatedly throughout the world with these kind of issues. In the 2 weeks that the president has been in office, he has threatened, a host of tariffs and economic sanctions against Colombia as it relates to taking back their citizens, who are being deported, and now with Mexico. I think in both instances, the president feels as though he achieved substantial political wins and forced concessions from the Canadians and Mexicans and the Colombians. I suspect that we're going to see these tools again and again and again, that the president's going to seek to force concessions from other countries with the threat of tariffs. I would not be surprised, even if in 30 days we work out a more comprehensive settlement with Canada and Mexico, there's nothing that prevents the president from re-threatening these tariffs against them again. So I do think that it is going to be very interesting over the next 3 years to see to the extent to which the president seeks to leverage the threat of tariffs to force concessions on an array of issues, but obviously of paramount importance to them has been anything related to migration and border security.
Just lastly, some of America's allies, and we've been talking about Canada and Mexico as being, not just neighbors, but also important allies, they view all of this rhetoric, all of these threats as being, to use one of the words being used by Canadian officials, chaotic. Do you think that once the dust has settled, this will be revealed to have been a stroke of genius on the part of the Trump administration?
I think that's going to be the ultimate question. There's a cost you pay for this. So you announce you're putting in place 25% tariffs. What I don't think people see is that all the U.S. businesses who there's a lot of U.S. manufacturing that's based in Mexico. The U.S. has long enjoyed, trade agreements, free trade agreements with Mexico. Businesses have built their businesses, invested billions of dollars into putting production in Mexico. And so when suddenly these tariffs are put in place, those businesses are scrambling, and then suddenly the tariffs are taken off. So I guess the question that people are going to have to judge as this goes forward is that chaos in the United States, and is that impact and that chilling effect it has economically worth the gains we're getting in terms of the deployment of 10,000 troops? I will say this, that Mexico has actually done quite a bit, especially over the last year. During the tail end of the Biden administration, the number of people crossing that border illegally dropped dramatically. It went down from roughly 250,000 per month to 50,000 per month. Drug seizures went down as well. Mexico's always been a great partner in terms of law enforcement investigations at the border. So I think that, squeezing additional gains out of Mexico, and some of this is tackling a problem that is a much different problem than the one the president campaigned on, but it does come at a cost, and it'll be interesting to see whether that chaos and the business community's frustration with this kind of stop and start approach ultimately is worth the gains we make.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. Thank you very much for your time. John Sandwig, former acting director for ICE. Thank you very much indeed. That is all we have time for on Global News today. Thank you very much indeed for watching. Be sure to join us again tomorrow for more exclusive interviews. Until then, goodbye.
Arabiya News, we go beyond the headlines.
From the latest breaking news to in-depth coverage of global events.
We're not bought or sold. Nobody owns us.
The loss of life, the destruction of property. The conflicts are such a terrible thing.
Context and analysis to help you see the full picture.
The world is in a very dangerous place.
Join us on Arabiya News,
It's very impressive.
where knowledge meets perspective.
Irene, thank you so much for joining Al Arabiya. I want to kick off by asking you to sort of walk me through how you view your role within NATO, because women today are under pressure in various parts of the world and, frankly, in the West.
So first of all, thank you for the invitation, the opportunity to have this moment of exchange about a very important topic, not only women in NATO, but I would say on women across the globe and about our rights and the general pushback, I would say, that we are facing today. The role I have at NATO, I'm the NATO Secretary General Special Representative for Women, Peace and Security, is not new. I'm the fourth Special Representative. The position was established in 2012. But after 12 years, I have to say that despite the progress that we have made within the alliance, there is still much to do. Of course, the work I do within NATO is around the mandate of the alliance. So it's specific about the role of women and peace and security. So we do not cover other issues. But of course, what we do contributes to advancing gender equality. And it is also stated in our latest strategic concept endorsed in Madrid in 2022 that advancing gender equality is a reflection of the common values of the alliance. So what I do is really to look at everything that the alliance does to make sure that gender perspectives are included. What does this mean? It means that every time we take a decision, both at political and a military level, we have to make sure that we consider the diversity of the population. Population is made by half by men and the other half by women, so we cannot take decision without considering that security is perceived in a different way by men and women.
No doubt. How concerned are you when you see President-elect Trump's pick for defense saying that women shouldn't be in combat roles?
This is a topic that has been discussed over the decades around the globe. The hope was that we had overcome the barriers, the cultural barriers. Certainly we have overcome the legal barriers. So everywhere in our across allies and also in our partners, countries, women are part of the armed forces. In different extents, I would say across NATO allies, we have an average of 12%. So if we look at the population, as I said, 50% made by women, there is still a big gap to cover this percentage. I think that we still have a lot of work to overcome cultural barriers and change the mindset. We are not all at the same stage. So this conversation will certainly be put at the table, but there is a general consensus that women have to be part of the military forces. And we have proof that nowadays, if we look at Ukraine, how incredible women are fighting now on the front line. Since the full-scale invasion, a lot of women have joined voluntarily, and that's very important to say, that they were not obliged to do it. They are around 60,000 now in the armed forces. More than 40,000 are civilians, but the rest are military, and 5,000 are fighting on the front line alongside with their male colleagues.
If the United States rolls back women's role in the military, and I mean in combat positions, does that weaken the NATO alliance and the NATO mission?
I'm not expecting this change to happen. Of course, I'm expecting maybe some conversation around this, but there is a consensus. There are policies in place. This year, in Washington, D.C., and our big yearly summit, we endorse a new women, peace and security policy. When we endorse a policy, 32 allies come together and they agree on what is on the policy.
Including the United States.
Including.
Yeah.
Indeed. And this lasts for 5 years. And the policy states very clearly that increasing participation of women in all peace and security efforts, both on the diplomatic and in the military side, is what we have to do if we want to enhance our operational effectiveness. Yeah. And this is where my work leads, to the implementation of this policy that will be translated next year in a new action plan. We are working on it. And this is where I will concentrate my efforts.
Yeah. Talk to me about this. You mentioned Ukraine and the role of women there in combat positions that they've taken on as an act of necessity. There's a lot of conversation, of course, about how that war may come to a conclusion. In your mind, are women better prepared to take on roles not just in the military now, but also in government in Ukraine?
I think as historically we have seen how wars change the role of women within the society. They open up different possibilities because men go to the front line. In this case, the front line is both physical and also on the space, because we see the war in Ukraine played on the hybrid space and cybersecurity, but also with very old technique on the front line. Women have filled the position in Ukraine as they did in the past during the First World War and Second World War. We see incredible women in politics at governmental level. We see women on the front line and covering all roles in the society. Even in the defense industry recently, women have stepped up and take more positions. So I think this has worked as an accelerator for the society, and I expect that women will continue to play an important role in the resolution of the conflict and in the post-conflict, where we hope a just peace will happen soon, and we will see women to continue to take their important position.
When are we going to see a NATO Secretary General who is a woman? Because I know that was something that was mooted at the time, at the last round of conversations about this.
There was a lot of conversation about this. We need to find the best candidates. I will always say there are some requirements, and requirements are that the Secretary General has to be a former Prime Minister or a President. And this is where the conversation has to be broader.
Yes.
Because the point is, why don't we have more women in politics covering this position? Because automatically then we could have more candidates for the position of the Secretary General. So now we have just welcomed our new Secretary General, Mark Rutte, but as you might heard, this week he announced a Deputy Secretary General, who is a woman and from North Macedonia, and she will join us in supposedly a few weeks. And she's the second one in the history, so it's already a progress. And I think maybe next one could be.
Could it be Giorgia Meloni?
You're right in my mind, because the conversation we had, it's also about the South and the rotation, you know, in alliance.
Exactly.
We're trying to rotate, and sometimes, I mean, we see a tendency to have a Secretary General coming from the northern countries, and there was a conversation about the South, but the requirements didn't come together. So one option could be to change the requirements, and the other is to see more Prime Minister in the South. So, of course, Giorgia Meloni could be a candidate in the future.
Walk me through this. Today, the rest of this region continues to reel over what we've seen happen in Afghanistan, and I'm talking about the subjugation of women and girls. Obviously, that was an area of serious concern for NATO, and when coalition forces were there. In your mind, what is the responsibility of NATO today to those women that we promised a future and then abandoned?
That's a difficult conversation to take. You know that NATO operates under mandates, and when we operate out of our area of responsibility, we do based on resolution of the United Nations Security Council. We withdraw, the mission is over. So as an alliance, we do no longer have a responsibility there collectively because we are no longer present. But of course, allies, individually and bilaterally and in different contexts such as...
And as human beings.
Yes, and they continue to provide support. The situation is very worrisome. There are no words to describe what happened. And I think that individually, as I said, a human being and with our respective roles at national level, we have to continue to speak out about what is happening there and to fight for women's rights, because the silence will really put them, you know, in we will forgive about them, even if we don't do. But in the global conversation, you see, if you read the newspaper, it doesn't really come on the news so often.
What do you think is the solution there in your mind? Because obviously there is an ability of nations who are giving aid to Afghanistan to exert pressure on them.
If I could have a solution, you know, I would try to put this, implement it. I found that extremely difficult. What I'm doing on my side is to continue dialogue with women from Afghan and see if there is a way to support. One of the focus is always how to train women to create space for dialogue for them in terms of dialogue also with the Taliban or mediation processes. And I know that there are several women who were also present in Doha a few years ago that continue the dialogue and try also to train younger generation to make sure that they will have the possibility to play a role and to exercise their right.
When you come to a forum like this one, based in the United Emirates, a country that has promoted women, not just to positions in government, also mandated their participation on boards in the private sector, are you encouraged by what you see and how the region is evolving?
Indeed, I am very much. I'm very happy to be here and to have the opportunity to engage in person, because I think this is the best way when then you have a concrete example that you can share. When people ask me, what do you do? It's difficult to explain then if you don't have stories to tell. And changing the narrative is what we absolutely have to do. So it's a very positive example, and I'm really looking forward to attending the forum tomorrow.
Tell me this, what is missing in your mind from the global dialogue for women? Because when we speak about this from a business perspective, we talk about quotas and we talk about a number of women on boards. One woman feels alone, 2 women has a friend, and then 3 women can make a change. But in your mind, from a governance perspective, from a security perspective, what needs to change?
I think it's a question of the cultural change I was mentioning earlier. And it's about gender, what we call gender-responsive leadership. We focus a lot on the participation of women, but we still find resistance, cultural barriers. And sometimes women are there because government decide to do, and then speak at global level, not referring to the local situation. But at the end, there is no real willingness to integrate. So it's more a token than a reality. So I think that what we have to look is the change of mindset of who is in power today, which in the normality are men. So we have to look into what we call the gender-responsive leadership to say that to train, to dialogue with both men and women together to understand the benefit that the entire society will have if women take on more position at high level. It's not for women, it's not helping women to do something, when they say, I'm helping my wife. No, it's not about this. Because in the moment where the dynamic changes, men will benefit from this different dynamic. They will have more time for the children. They have more time even for discussion and conversation, not under the pressure. And the solution that will be found will be better solution because they will really bring the perspective of the entire society. So this topic of the gender-responsive leadership is something I advocated for and I put as a first goal of the new policy at NATO, because I think that in a male-dominated environment, while we work to increase the number of women, we have also to work with the men who are present to make sure that we can reach the same high-quality solution in a shorter time.
Bring them with us.
Yes.
Irene, it's great to have you here at Al Arabiya. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
From the White House to Gaza, Kiev to Beijing, elections, economics and the environment compete with conflicts and other complex issues for our attention. In an age of fake news, deepfake and artificial intelligence,
they've got to have a vote and a say.
It's important to look beyond the loudest voice to understand the truth. From newsmakers to groundbreakers,
my campaign is going very well.
Presidents, prime ministers, princes and peacemakers, and cultural tastemakers.
As Arabs, as Middle Eastern, we're too emotional.
Join me on The Rizkan Show for empowering conversation.